Chair, you have a live mic.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Commissioner meeting. I want to let everybody know that we have a full day today, very full day. And if you haven't silenced your cell phone, please do so at the moment. And we're going to have some procedural changes today a little bit. We'll explain those later. I want to remind every speaker that speaks on any subject that you have 3 minutes, not 3 minutes and a second. We've got a lot of people to move through the chute this morning, and we want to hear what you have to say, but we don't want to hear more than you have to say. So with that, let's get started. Let's get the Lord in on this deal.
Very good. Today we have our invocation by Pastor John Huffman, Harvest Recovery Ministries, and our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by J.R. Restrepo, Army veteran, Desert Storm 5 years, and VFW 7721.
Father, I just thank you, Lord. I thank you for this county, Lord. I thank you for the leaders that are leading this county, Lord. I just pray that you give them a supernatural wisdom, Father. Lord, that you just give them the ability to articulate their hearts, Father, for this county, Lord. I pray that you protect them and their families, Lord. I pray for those that are going to come up here with their petitions today, Lord, that you allow them to articulate properly so that we can understand them, Lord, and this county can continue to grow with your grace. Lord, be involved in this meeting, Lord. As the commissioner said today, Lord, there's not a lot of time. So we just pray that everybody here is heard, they feel heard, Lord, and that the county commissioners that you blessed to serve over us, Lord, hear them loud and clear and implement properly. So we thank you for that wisdom. We love you for that wisdom. And we ask all this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job.
Good job.
Commissioners' agenda changes for December 10th, 2024. First is to move item 16K12 to 12B. This is a recommendation to approve and authorize the chairman to execute a settlement agreement which will dismiss all claims brought by Naples Golf Development LLC against Collier County and Commissioner McDaniel related to a Burt Harris claim filed pursuant to Florida statutes 70.001 regarding application of the county's golf course conversion ordinance on the links of Naples Golf Course and approve all necessary budget amendments. This is being moved at the county manager's request. Second is to move item 16K8 to 12C. This is a recommendation to appoint 4 members to the Library Advisory Board. This is being moved at Commissioner Hall's request. We have an agenda note for item 16B12 should include the following additional text to the recommendation and authorize staff to enter into a work order for Task D for permitting, bidding, and post-design services for the Wiggins Pass maintenance dredge. This ad is at staff's request. We do have a couple of time-certain items. First, we have companion items 9A, 9B, and 9C are to be heard no sooner than 10 a.m. This is related to the Fiddler's Creek Section 29 development area, Marco Shores Fiddler's Creek Planned Unit Development, and Marco Shores Fiddler's Creek Development Order Amendment. Second, companion items 11A and 11B to be heard no sooner than 1 p.m., which is a Collier County Behavioral Health Center update and the related naming rights agreement with the David Lawrence Mental Health Center, Inc. We do have court reporter breaks scheduled for 10:30 and 2:50. With that, County Attorney.
Nothing, thank you.
Commissioners ex parte on the consent and summary and any changes.
Mr. Kowal.
I have no changes on the summary 17B. I do have meetings.
Mr. Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no changes to the agenda and no ex parte on the consent agenda.
Mr. McDaniel.
Good morning, sir. I have no changes either, and I do have meetings on 17B and meetings and calls on 17D on the summary.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Castro.
No changes, and I had meetings on 17B.
I have no changes, and I do have meetings and emails on 17B and meetings on 17D as well. Troy, do we have any speakers regarding one of the summary items?
I have no one listed for consent or summary at this time, sir.
Can I get a motion to approve the consent and summary?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done.
Commissioners, item 2, agenda and minutes. We have item 2A and 2B. If you'd like to take them together, those are the meeting minutes for October 22nd, 2024 and November 12th, 2024.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Before we move past our awards and recognitions, I did just want to thank the staff. We had several staff members scheduled to get awards today, and they graciously agreed to be moved to January so that we could make way on this agenda for some of the more lengthy items. So we'll be seeing all of those folks in January, and thank you again to those of you that agreed to be moved. That brings us to item 5. Before we start the presentation for 5A, just want to direct your attention to the back of the room for the Artists of the Month. We have 2 Collier County employees as the December Artists of the Month. Along the back wall are 2 original paintings by Emilio Rodriguez, tangible personal property appraiser, who has worked in the property appraiser's office for 7 years. Emilio grew up in New York City as a young, aspiring artist. He marveled at the explosive, high-energy colors and diverse themes depicted in the New York City subway system. Since moving to Florida in 2011, he has carried forward those themes in his artistic work as seen in his paintings here. On the side wall are 2 digital prints created by John Melicky, Arts and Culture Manager, Naples, Marco Island, and Everglades CVB. John likes to travel and photograph the places he visits. Since the employee art exhibition, he is now working on developing his digital editing skills and taking more photos on his journeys. Both Emilio and John participated in the Creative Collier Employee Art Exhibition held earlier this year at the Collier County Government Center Museum. Additional artists from this exhibition will be displayed throughout the year in the board chambers. With that brings us to item 5A. This is a presentation of the Collier County Business of the Quarter for December 2024 to Spherian Staffing and Recruiting. The award will be accepted by representatives of the business. Also attending is Bethany Sawyer, Greater Naples Chamber of Commerce. Congratulations.
Hey, Bethany, good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Where's your towel?
Hi, my name is David Miller. I'm the owner of Spherion Staffing and Recruiting. We want to thank Collier County for this recognition. We've been in Collier County, Naples since 2011. We really enjoy the pro-business climate you guys have provided for us. So this is a great recognition for our company. We basically help people find employment, and we help company find people. So if you're looking for a job, or you know somebody who needs a job, we're your people. It's Spherion Staffing. And just on another note, our branch here in Naples, they have won the branch of the year 4 times. So congratulations to Denise Erdow and her team. Thank you very much.
All right, County Manager, what can we knock out before 10?
Troy, do we have any public comments?
Yes, ma'am. We have 2 for public comment. Your first speaker is Patrick Wack, and he'll be followed by Sue Black.
Back in black. Hi, thanks for your time. I'm Patrick Wack, president of the Seagate Property Owners Association in Naples, joined by Joanne Janney, who's representing Naples K, and many of our neighbors. We're here to speak to you about two issues with regard to Clam Bay. The first is the declining water quality and ecological health. The second is our community's lack of representation in matters critical to the bay. As a bit of background, the waters of Clam Bay abut our communities. The waters have been impaired for many years and were recently added to FDEP's list of impaired waters. Now, we care about the bay for two reasons. One, it's our backyard. It's integral to our quality of life and property values. Also, it's a jewel of Collier County, enjoyed by residents and tourists alike. We're concerned that the continued decline could result in a situation like the late 1990s, where the system collapsed and remediation cost millions in today's dollars. Clam Bay's water quality and ecological issues are well documented in the county's Pelican Bay Services Division report. I can provide copies of the relevant data. These issues are primarily a function of nutrients entering the system, which has a lot to do with reclaimed irrigation water, and also inadequate flushing, which is partially related to dredging effectiveness. The bay is small and shallow and particularly sensitive to how water flows and restrictions. Second issue is our community's lack of representation, both our communities. In 2016, in a contentious 3-2 vote, the BCC gave oversight of both the dredging and the water quality to the Pelican Bay Taxing Unit. This was largely done as a result of a conflict between coastal zone management and Pelican Bay over dredging for navigation. At the time, a dissenting commissioner said, "I feel the county commissioners are really abdicating their role for the rest of the county by approving this for one community." Essentially, a private entity was given control of a public asset. I will also add that Pelican Bay has historically been reimbursed with TDC funds for the dredging and related costs. One real-world implication of this structure occurred in 2022, when during a dredging operation, PBSD's contractor built an unauthorized land bridge for at least 6 weeks to shut off the water flow. And if your toilet doesn't flush for 6 weeks, it stinks. There was never a heads up, never an apology. Now, we've met extensively with Pelican Bay representatives over the last year. Unfortunately, I think the response is best summed up in a recent PBSD board meeting, where our request for an action plan was met with no discussion and an eye roll by one member. To address these issues, we suggest three things. One, the formation of a Clam Bay advisory committee to advise the county on issues related to the health of the bay, water quality, flushing, dredging. This should represent all stakeholders. Second, consider our request for $75,000 to fund an alternative engineering and biological analysis of the bay. Third, there should be greater oversight by other entities within the county, whether the county manager or otherwise. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Sue Black. Now might be a good time to remind all of our speakers, there is a timer with lights at each podium. When the light goes yellow, you'll have 30 seconds. You'll hear a single beep. When the light goes red, you will hear beeps. Your time is up. Sue?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Sue Black. I'm a
Excuse me.
resident of Seagate for the past 20.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. Before you get started, we'll reset your clock.
Don't be sorry. Paul, he was sleeping at the switch. There's a fella in the room that knows more about Clam Bay and everything that transpires that's in the far back corner there. I think maybe at some particular point in time, Tim Hall, and I think at some particular point in time we ought to bring this up as a hearing and have a public discussion with regard to it.
Yes, I agree. I've got several.
I would like to do that.
Can I just make a comment?
Commissioner Collier.
Myself and Trinity attended a meeting last week with the individuals at Pelican Bay, the organization there with Chad and the other individuals. We had another gentleman from the county. These fine folks came to see me at the beginning of last week and brought this to my attention. So we are in the infinite stages of moving this in a direction hopefully everybody can be satisfied with. I know I didn't have an opportunity. I think we emailed Mr. Wack back the other day. And I think the meeting went pretty well to a point, and I believe they had a meeting right before my meeting, and it seemed to be a more positive than a typical meeting they've had in the past. So we are. The problem is it's jurisdictional. These individuals live in the city of Naples.
Right.
They're right on the line,
Yeah.
and they're closer to the bay than most people in Pelican Bay, and they feel the effects before anybody else. But they don't have any voice in that. So I think that's something we need to just start moving forward.
I remember when I first got elected, I went and sat with Tim and learned everything there was to know about upper, lower Clam Bay and everything that goes on with the ultimate flushing and the loss of the mangroves that we have up there and so on and so forth. So I think bringing it forward and having a public discussion about it is a really good idea.
And Mr. Chairman, none of us were on the board at the time that that decision was made.
Right.
And it does seem a little odd that we don't have authority over the environmental impacts of dredging on a body of water that is within our jurisdiction. So I agree. And I think sooner is better than later.
Great.
For that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, I think it warrants a great discussion, so thank you. All right, sorry about that.
As I said, I'm Sue Black. I lived in Seagate for 20-plus years. Just want to reiterate and thank you, gentlemen, for your comments and feedback of getting support for our cause. Hurricanes are not going to stop. We're always going to have the sand shifting and the shoals being created. As Patrick said, this is about 50 feet from our backyard. We don't have a view of it, we live it. So we really need to look at the health of the water. There's got to be an amicable solution for the cleansing and the dredging of the water. Do the right things and the right things will happen. So thank you very much for your time.
That is all of our speakers on item 7.
Commissioners are going to try to jump around the agenda a little bit here and take some of the items that we can address prior to our 10 o'clock time certain. So let's start with item 11C. This is a recommendation to award construction invitation to bid number 24-8222, medical examiner office expansion to Rycon Construction, Inc. in the amount of $4,584,760 and an owner's allowance of $250,000 for potential unforeseen conditions. Authorize the chairman to sign the attached agreement and approve the necessary budget amendments. Mr. Brian Deloney, your Director of Facility Management, is here to present.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Deloney, the Director of Facilities Management. Today I'm here to present on the construction contract 24822 for the medical examiner expansion project.
You want a quick motion for approval?
That'd be good.
I'll move that.
Do you have anything in your presentation that you want to get on the record that maybe, for the public or anything that,
I mean, the biggest part of the project is, this construction project is the medical examiner has to stay in operation. So this will be a phased project for an expansion, but it's a little bit of difficulty there associated with, but that, other than that, it's
planned expansion. I don't want anybody that never heard of it to think that all of a sudden you're squeezing something in.
It is a planned expansion, yes, sir.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
I moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Good job, Brian.
Thank you.
Commissioners, let's go ahead and go to item 12A. This is a recommendation that the Board of County Commissioners appoint its members to the Community Redevelopment Agency, the Tourist Development Council, the Community and Economic Development Board, the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, the Public Safety Coordinating Council, and the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council. This item is brought onto the agenda under the County Attorney's section, but these are your annual appointments to the advisory boards.
So basically, I have to move to the tourist development.
Yes, sir.
So that's going to put a hole in the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. And Commissioner Kowal, are you satisfied where you're at, or do you want to move?
I could take on a little extra responsibility with the Public Safety Board. It's pretty scheduled out, and it's not like we get a lot of extra meetings or extra stuff that comes up.
Yeah.
So I could help out with the Affordable Housing Committee.
I would like that. I mean, if we've talked about that. We've talked about you behind your back.
Okay. I didn't know that. I guess I have that sixth sense.
Yeah. No, with your real estate background, I think you would be a good fit to fill those shoes.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll be more than happy to accept that.
You, Commissioner LaCastro, you any desires where you'd like to go?
One of the things that we've said at previous meetings is that we want to spread the wealth so we all get a chance to have exposure to these boards. So I've done AHAC. I'm obviously coming off of TDC. When I was first elected, I did Public Safety Coordinating Council and then turned it over to Commissioner Colwell. So I look at those as things I've already gotten exposure to. The South Florida Regional Planning Council, that's what you and I tag team on, but Commissioner McDaniel really leads the charge on that one. And that one I look at as sort of like almost the subset. I actually think before I volunteer for anything else, unless you think differently, we should stay on that one for continuity. Because especially you're in the guts of that one. And that one, to save some time here, I strongly suggest the two of us, stay on that one. It could dissolve this coming year. It could totally be overhauled, and we don't want to change horses on that one. So I'm basically his backup, but I try to go to as many meetings as possible. And then, when we're there together, we really sort of lead the charge in some discussions. Or my job is to back up Commissioner McDaniel. So I'll stay on that one. The Community and Economic Development Board. That's you, Commissioner Saunders.
Yes.
Right? Okay. What do you want to say about that one? Is this your second year?
Yeah, I have no problem staying on that. I am going to be chairing next year, so, and that particular board is not real active, so I can certainly handle both of those.
Okay. I mean, that's the only board that I haven't been a part of. I guess, the Community Redevelopment Agency is another board. That's you.
Collier and Bay Shore.
Yeah, so that really can't swap, right? So, yeah, it doesn't make sense. So it looks like there's nothing left for me, so I'll pass my time to Commissioner Saunders.
Well, why don't you take over the Economic Development Board then?
Okay. Yeah, and also because you're about to be chair, so I'll take the EDB.
Commissioner Saunders, is there anything that you haven't done?
There are a lot of things I haven't done that I can't talk about.
So
No, I think.
with those anointments, then we'll.
I think we covered it all,
I
right?
think we covered it all there. Do you,
Commissioner Caldwell, you're staying on safety, right?
Yeah, I would like to
Okay,
stay
yeah.
on there.
you need a motion on those things?
You do.
County Attorney.
May as well.
I'll make a motion that those appointments stand.
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, speak now or forever hold that peace.
Commissioners, let's move on to item 14A. This is a recommendation. This is under the Community Redevelopment Agency. This is a recommendation to award invitation to bid 24-8267, the Bay Shore 17 Acres Pedestrian Boardwalk Connection to Sugden Park Project to Infinite Construction LLC in the base bid amount of $3,335,497.77. Approve an owner's allowance of $37,000 and authorize the chairman to sign the attached agreement. Mr. John Dunnick, your Executive Director of CRAs and Facilities Management, is here to answer questions or present.
Good morning. The pleasure of the board, I can do a full presentation or cut to the chase. This has been a long-standing.
I can make a motion to approve. I think it's something we've been working on for a long time.
Yeah, I'm very familiar.
I'm very familiar. I mean, what's going on, and the contractor that got awarded is very reputable, and they actually come in lower than a lot of other contractors do.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, motion and second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. I'd just like to take a moment to thank Tammy Scott from our team, who's worked on this for 6 years. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Manager, if we want to, we can just do 12C real quick. It'll take a minute.
Sure. 12C is moved from item 16K8. This is a recommendation to appoint 4 members to the Library Advisory Board, and this was moved at Commissioner Hall's request.
I am only going to change one thing. In District 2, I'm going to recommend that we approve Jennifer Ashford to sit on that board, and that's the only change. So I'll make a motion to move Jennifer Ashford to the Library Advisory Committee.
So that adds 5. We're
It's the
appointing
same
5.
one. There was just one spot for District 2, and it was another person, but I would like to see Jennifer Ashford in that spot.
And the motion includes the appointment of the others.
Correct.
I'll second that motion.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Commissioners, with that, let's jump back to item 11D. I think we have enough time to take the procurement ordinance item. This is a recommendation to authorize the county attorney to advertise an ordinance repealing and replacing procurement ordinance number 2013-69 as amended. And here comes Sandra, are your division director. Now you'll have to say your name for me.
Sandra Cernka for the record.
Division Director for Procurement.
I do have a presentation. This definitely is a good news item. If you'd like, I'll start my presentation. So this has been, the development of the procurement ordinance, which is part of your agenda packet, has been really a joint effort. We have worked with outside legal counsel, the Office of the County Attorney, key county stakeholders, along with the clerk's office. And we also have a consultant that provided benchmarking comparison with other local agencies. Now, the establishment of the procurement ordinance, it was established in 1987. In 2015, there was an increase to the thresholds. Those are the current thresholds in place, so keep that in mind during this presentation that we have not requested an increase since 2015. In 2013, there was a repeal of the ordinance, and there were subsequent amendments. Now, the key benefits of repealing the ordinance, it ensures that we're in compliance with Florida statute. It promotes fair competition transparency. It aligns the thresholds with peer organizations, reduces administrative burden while streamlining processes, and it improves efficiencies and maximizes county resources. We are recommending an increase in the thresholds. We are recommending from the small purchase a single quote to increase it from $3,000 to $10,000. For your informal competition, your 3 quotes from the $3,000, $50,000 range to $10,000 to $250,000 range. For the formal competition threshold, we are requesting an increase from $50,000 to $250,000. Now, as part of the benchmarking study, our consultant looked at surrounding agencies that were similar in nature and size. And as you can see here, Collier County is among the lowest at a $3,000 range for your informal competition, highest being $50,000 for Lee County. For your competitive bidding threshold, again, Collier County is among the lowest at $50,000. City of Cape Coral is at $250,000, along with Lee County and Manatee. The same applies for the governing body approved threshold. Collier County is at a $50,000 range, where we have Sarasota, Broward, Manatee at a higher range. Now, as we were putting this together, we didn't want to lose sight on the fact that it's important to have internal controls to mitigate risk associated with an increase of thresholds. We want to make sure that there's strong accountable measures. We want to make sure that we provide mandatory training, and this would be at all levels of the procurement cycle and everyone that is involved in this cycle. And then we also wanted to make sure that we implemented and leverage our OpenGov, which is our bidding platform. We want to make it mandatory for quotes between that $50,000 to $250,000 range to be mandatory use through that bidding platform. Now, the bidding platform does provide a lot of security. There's a lot of reporting capabilities, and there's also an ability to have that audit trail. We are also want to leverage SAP, and we're working on seeing if we can add additional fields that will provide additional reporting capability.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Explain strong accountability measures.
So strong accountability measures comes in all facets of it. We have to start with the individuals that are requesting services, for example, those that are out in the field, along with those in the accounting division, along with those that are managing it, approving the managers, and also director. So we are working with our corporate compliance along with our clerk's office to ensure that there are internal controls at each of those in each of those areas.
I mentioned it because I mentioned that because, you know, for 2 years we've dealt with after the facts and single source, you know, all of these things that we have to basically ratify because they're already done. And I can see, you know, internal controls to mitigate the risk. I'm all about empowering people to do their job, empowering people to streamline the process. Procurement is a slow part of the speed of government. So I'm all about empowering people to do that. But I'm also more about holding them accountable. I understand that there's things that fall out of the normal processes, and that's fine. But if you have to come out of the normal process, find somebody to talk about it. Find a superior to talk about it. Find somebody, get with the clerk's office. Find out a legal way to do this instead of just willy-nilly doing it and it coming back to us. Commissioners, why did y'all make that decision? Well, we didn't. It was already done. So I'm all about the strong accountability. So I want to empower people, but I also want to hold them accountable because they need to act like their job depends on it, because basically it does.
And we also included additional language in our ethics section that really adds a little bit more value overall. And we also are adding additional language in the procurement manual, which the county manager will execute. So we're trying to cover all areas, but also what goes hand in hand is the educational part of that. That's why we are developing a more comprehensive training that would be mandatory, and again, at all levels. Any additional questions, sir?
No, I love it. Set them up to win.
Thank you.
One quick question.
A couple additional
McGann.
significant proposed, oh, yes, sir.
Before you jump in that, are the manuals going to come back to us for review before they're signed off on?
Yes, absolutely. And again, those manuals, it's the purchasing manual and the procurement manual that are executed by the county manager. But yes, we would make that part of the packet.
Because I concur with the chairman with regard to accountability, but I'd like to be able to see what those measures that we're going to implement in fact are to hold people accountable. That, we want to empower them, but at the same time, they got to step up to the plate. So I want to make sure that if we're authorizing greater authority, that there is at the same time accountability that comes with that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So a couple additional significant changes that you'll find in the ordinance is Section 3. It increases the county manager's approval from the $50,000 to $250,000. And again, this is aligned with that formal competitive threshold. Like I mentioned, the ethics section, we expanded a little bit more, added more language. We wanted to make sure that it aligned with Florida statutes, included a conflict of interest section, along with the code of silence process. For Section 12, that is your procurement methods, for your exemption of competitions, along with the waiver, we went ahead and aligned it with a formal threshold. For your exemption of competition, we added a few additional categories. And for your waiver competition, we went ahead and aligned the single source definition with the Florida statute. Currently, we have a sole source, and a lot of times that causes a little bit of a confusion. So we went ahead and just mirrored the language from the Florida statute. For your emergency purchases, we clarified the language in the ordinance and also in the manual, and that's more aligned with Florida statutes. We have a new section titled Formal Competitive Awards, and that outlines the bidding process along with negotiations, and it's aligned with current and best practices. For your purchasing card program, we clarified a lot of the language in there. We went ahead and clarified the language that the county manager is responsible for setting those limits for your single transactions and your monthly spending limits. Section 20, your contract administration section. Again, we wanted to make sure that we aligned the approval with that competitive threshold. So for your change orders and amendments that exceed the original board amount, anything over 250 would be presented to the board for approval. Anything under will be presented to the board for approval through that procurement ratification report. It also allows a procurement director to approve increases and decreases to board-approved days, and we have incorporated a process for requests that come in for contractual price adjustments. In addition to that section, we went ahead and stated that any requests from staff to reduce the retainage below that 5%, that is Florida statute, or waive the assessment of liquidated damages, those would be coming back to the board for approval. And then it also authorizes the procurement director to approve assignments of contracts and the after the facts. I know a lot of people don't want to hear the after the fact term, but we went ahead and aligned it up also with the formal competitive threshold that will streamline a lot of our processes. So anything over 250 would be presented to the board for approval. Anything less than that amount would be reported to the board through that ratification report. So our next steps is for the board to approve the advertisement of the procurement ordinance. We would bring it back at the next meeting, and we continue to work with internal staff, corporate compliance, and the clerk's office to establish those internal controls.
Great.
Thank you.
Can you include how we can incorporate the cone of silence?
Absolutely, sir.
I'll make a move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Good
Thank you
job,
very
sir.
much.
Commissioners, if you are okay with it, we can take the county item 11E, which is our federal and state priorities. I think we have enough time to get through that one, even with a little bit of discussion. So item 11E is a recommendation to approve the proposed Collier County state and federal legislative and administrative priorities for 2025. Ms. Bridget Corcoran, a legislative affairs coordinator, is here to present.
Good morning. For the record, Bridget Corcoran, Legislative Affairs Coordinator. So this document, excuse me, was produced in conjunction with the lobbying teams, county management, department staff, and of course with your input. It's not an exhaustive list, and it's a snapshot in time, and I'll bring back any issues which I cannot derive direction from this document. I'll bring those back to you for your approval. It is formatted in an alphabetical order. There's the only one that is in order of priority is the appropriation projects. And the appropriation projects will be presented by Chairman Hall to the legislative delegation in this room on January 8th at 9 a.m. So giving your input in this document, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this time. If not, I would just ask for a motion to approve that also authorizes the chair to draft as needed any correspondences on behalf of the board for any of these projects.
Any questions? All right. I don't think we have any questions. We've seen the document pretty extensively, so we're pretty familiar with it. With that, I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Great, thank you.
Commissioners, just in time, I saw Mr. Tuso walk into the room, so let's go ahead and continue on with item 11F. It's a recommendation to approve and authorize the chairman through an exemption from the competitive process to execute expenditures to Visit Florida for membership fees and destination marketing programs up to $82,000 for the period of October 2024 through September 2025, and to make a finding that these expenditures promote tourism. Mr. Jay Tusa, your Division Director of Tourism, is here to present. Sorry to get you right coming in the room.
But I've been in the hall, so
Okay.
I've been
Very
here, just
good.
waiting to step in
A
when
man that stays ready doesn't have to get ready.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I have prepared a brief overview for this agenda item for you, and I can walk you through this if you like. I think that this presentation demonstrates the value of this partnership, this relationship that we have with Visit Florida. And then certainly when I'm through presenting this, any questions that the board might have, I'm happy to answer those for you. All right, so here's just a few little brief overview, a few items on here. Visit Florida and their role, official tourism marketing corporation for the state of Florida. And then the partnership and what it provides to us, marketing opportunities, marketing campaigns, co-op opportunities for tour operators, PR opportunities. So these are just a few things. Also, their research, we have access to that. And then inclusion in photo and video shoots. Let's see what else on here. And then this is a big one here at the bottom, assistance with recovery messaging and digital campaigns to support the destination after declared emergencies, as was the case with Hurricane Ian. So Visit Florida put up $200,000 in advertising for us after Hurricane Ian, which really, that's a great benefit for us when maybe we're not spending as much dollars in the event of a storm situation like that. And Visit Florida just did this recently with Bradenton and Sarasota as well, following the storms we just recently had. So they put up $500,000 for those two destinations. So definitely some added value there in our relationship with Visit Florida. This is something that I wanted to demonstrate the value of our relationship with opportunities through tour operators. So there's actually two of them here, and I'll just kind of show you this one real quick, and then I'll jump to this one. So one was Germany, one was UK. These are really important because these are where we do co-op marketing opportunities in international markets, and then people go through a tour operator and they book their stay to come to Collier County. So this is something that we can track. So this is number of room nights and revenue that were booked through these various operators. And you can kind of see here, there's 2 for Germany, and then there are several others here for the UK. One thing that I want to point out is I sent an email to the commissioners yesterday afternoon in regard to this item in particular. The clerk had brought up a point about this and maybe being a duplication of efforts with our international reps. And this actually works in concert with our international reps. Our international reps take advantage of these co-op marketing opportunities to market these packages to people and then sell them. So in addition to these opportunities with Visit Florida, they also do this with other tour operators as well that generate room nights and revenue. So I had asked our reps to send us a couple of examples yesterday, which they did. And just kind of a real quick note, there's probably about another $2 million in revenue that's realized through tour operators. So tour operators are really important for us in the destination. And then this is just some marketing campaigns, some support that we receive. You can see there the cost savings, $255,000. And that $200,000 that I mentioned earlier in the presentation is listed here. That was the funds that Visit Florida put up. There was no matching for that. That was something they put up on behalf of the organization, the county. And then you can kind of see there some other opportunities through AAA. And then there was also something we did for Hurricane Ian. Visit Florida matched some funds that we put up. And then again, here's some cost savings through co-op advertising, $85,000. So if we were to go and do these different programs on this slide, it would cost an additional $85,000 outside of the Visit Florida partnership. And then here's just some UK public relations. So you can see there, we had an opportunity for an article in the Times. The reach was $1.5 million, and the value was $146,000. So, you know, these PR opportunities, and then we have some here as well for Germany. These are really great opportunities for us to get out from a PR standpoint. It stands up and works in concert with our marketing efforts. So when people see our ads or they go to a tour operator, they see articles in publications, they all work hand in hand together to showcase Collier County. And then these are media mission opportunities through Visit Florida. This is where basically Visit Florida is taking us and other destinations as well to journalists in certain areas. So you can kind of see there was one in New York City, California. So what they'll do is they'll do a mission, and then they'll meet up with all these different media folks, and then they'll represent the destination. That also saves us a little bit of money on the back end where we don't have to fly somebody out to California or New York. So there's also some cost savings there that's not reflected in this slide. And then here's one slide. It was asked when I presented this earlier to the board on kind of what other counties are spending. And you can kind of see here it's broken down. This is a 2023 fiscal year spend by county for Visit Florida. And you can kind of see there. And then we're highlighted a little bit more down towards the bottom at $206,000. And then, so the request now, when I originally came to the board, it was $150,000. But that was across the remainder of FY24 and then for 25. This ask is just for FY25, so it went from $150,000 to $82,000. And then certainly if y'all have any questions, I'm happy to entertain those.
Look, Commissioner McDaniel.
My main memory, and I don't have specifics, Jay, but my main memory is telling me that the Visit Florida has a lot of conflicts, has a lot of duplication, and I'm not in support of this expenditure. And I apologize for not having those specifics with me here right now. I was in the process of trying to get them and didn't come up with that because of my computer blip, but I just in remembering what's in fact transpired going in the past with Visit Florida, I'm not in support of this request.
Commissioner LaCastro.
So Jay, what's your response to that? You know, one of the things we charged you with when we recently hired you was shake the trees. take a look at things that maybe we think aren't worth the money, or on the flip side, that we're not investing in. Hence our last meeting, where we basically allowed you to spend money you already had, but it needed our approval to double what we were putting against tourism, because you brought in front of us something we hadn't really seen before, which was how quickly Collier County was dropping down the list of communities who are investing money in tourism. What's your honest assessment of this? I mean, you do come from this world, so it's not like you haven't heard of Visit Florida before. Right. Obviously, you wouldn't be standing before us if you didn't think it was an investment, but this is your chance to plead your case. I actually don't disagree with Commissioner McDaniel. I have some concerns as well, but to just give another perspective, and we've done it on a few other votes, we've given you the latitude of saying, you know what, we're going to fund this one particular thing, and I'm talking generically, not about this, but we're going to fund this one particular thing, but Jay, this could be it. So go in and really take a look, and then come back to us, and then with deep experience as a Collier County employee, you're able to stand in front of us and said, and not just sort of say, well, in my previous job, I think Visit Florida was great, or I hear from my colleagues that it's great or not great, but I appreciate the latitude of continuing the investment so I could be present, my team could be. I'm not saying this is the answer, but this is one possibility. And then you come back here and say, the $82,000 was well spent, but it wasn't well invested. I think we should back off from it. Or, wow, what you guys don't know is Visit Florida might have a bad rep on social media or in some sort of circles, but the way you and your team are utilizing it, it is big bang for the buck. So I look at it as that is a possibility. What are your thoughts hearing that? I mean, do you have enough knowledge ready to know, oh, Commissioner, you're going to give me $82,000, I'm going to get you $1 million worth of investment, or I'm not really sure, and Commissioner McDaniel could be right, and the $82,000 might be better spent somewhere else. It's not like we haven't recently invested in tourism in a major way. We just voted for you to spend millions and millions of dollars. Give us your perspective, because I'm sort of on the fence. We've had other discussions about Visit Florida, I think even before you were hired. It was sort of in the TikTok discussion. Remember that? Why are we investing in TikTok, and that might not be the best use of our money? Right. So either fight for Visit Florida right now, or tell us you're not sure, or say that, you think it's somewhere in the middle.
No, I think there's definite value to the partnership and the relationship. Visit Florida definitely brings some advantages to us. There are trade shows that we're able to take advantage of specifically through Visit Florida that we would not have access to if we were not a member of Visit Florida. That's a pretty big thing. And then, as far as what I just demonstrated on the slides, those relationships with those tour operators, the value that we get from those room nights that are generated through that, could we pick that up in another way? Yeah, perhaps, but it's probably a little bit easier to do that and a little bit less expensive to do that through Visit Florida than it would be to do that on our own or through our international reps. And then, the same thing with the marketing opportunities. There are savings there for us. So, we're able to take advantage of that when we place an ad in like a Southern Living type magazine, versus if we went and did it on our own. So, if we didn't have the Visit Florida partnership, could we survive? Yes. It would cost us probably a little bit more money, in my opinion, at the end of the day. But that's obviously, the decision the board has to make on how they feel about this.
Because here's something I would not want to see happen.
Yeah.
We vote down Visit Florida to save $82,000, but you keep going to the trade shows, and instead of getting an 80% discount because you're a Visit Florida member, you're paying top dollar, and in the end, instead of spending $82,000 for Visit Florida, you spent $270,000 on things that Visit Florida would have given you free admission to, or a greatly reduced price. I think part of the decision here is, I would say, if I vote against funding you for Visit Florida, or any commissioner does, what they're really voting against is not going to many of the things that a Visit Florida membership allows you to go to. Because if you don't get this $82,000, but you keep doing business as usual, then you're going to spend 3 times this amount, possibly going to things that Visit Florida gives you a discount to. So I just wanted to get that on the record. I'm not banging on tables saying Visit Florida is a great and wonderful organization. I think it does do some good things that we've done a deeper dive during our TDC meeting. But my vote's going to be an either or, either for Visit Florida and then you do a deep dive and make sure we got biggest bang for our buck, or if we don't vote for the 82,000, you don't have a blank check to then be paying triple and going to all the same things. That would be stupid. Then we would have been, even whether we thought Visit Florida was great or not, then I think we want the ability to say yes or no to the things you're about to overpay for if you're not a Visit Florida member.
And that's a really good point, Commissioner. Just one thing off the top of my head, IPW is an international trade show. We participate through Visit Florida with that. We spend $10,000 on that show, but if we were going to do that on our own, it would cost $30,000. So you can see right there in that instance, it's $20,000 more. So, and depending on where, budgets fall, then it could possibly be a missed opportunity. That's just something that if this is not accepted, then, we'll just have to relook at what we do and the number of shows we go to and those type of things, which, we certainly can do that. But there might be some missed opportunities there.
Mr. Collier.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to shed a little different light on it. I was sitting up here like the rest of us, when we first made a decision not to participate a year or so ago, and to see where it took us. And since then, I've had the opportunity. I think it was an organization, they called themselves BID, I believe. It was a small, private-owned restaurants, galleries, stuff like that within the city of Naples and Collier County that do not participate with the big hotels, do not participate with, or even get any money from the city CRA for Fifth Avenue and some other organizations, where we provide money as taxpayers to these organizations. They went, as usual, to get a grant from Visit Florida, which they've done every year since they've been in existence, and they went up there this past year to get their grant, and they were told they weren't allowed because Collier County didn't participate. So there's more affected by this than what meets the eye. We sit up here and look at the big numbers, the comparison to the other counties and stuff like that, but then you have a group of mom and pa owned restaurants here or whatever that rely on some of this money, and they weren't allowed to participate because of the fact that we didn't participate. So there's a lot more to it when you peel the skin back on the onion. So and I don't know what they would have gotten the grant regardless, but they see themselves getting choked out by a lot of bigger corporation restaurants. I think, and if you look right, not just recently, a transaction happened down on Fifth Avenue was Chops, Yabba's, Pazos. They were all bought out by a corporation, which used to be owned by a local guy that built them from nothing. So, there is some unseen things that these little things do affect from time to time. So I kind of got a different perspective of what some of these organizations depend on, and I didn't even realize. So just wanted to put it out there to my fellow commissioners. So.
Mr. Saunders.
Thank you. How much are we spending on advertising going forward? I know we've had an increase in that. What is that number again?
So we increased the budget at the last board meeting, and so now we're looking at $12 million. So
we're spending $12 million on advertising. Your recommendation is to approve this. You're our hired expert on this issue. I don't have any hesitation in saying I really don't know the real benefits from Visit Florida. I do know it's our job to second guess and to inquire and to learn as much as we can about these issues. But I'm relying on you, so I'm going to support your recommendation. If it turns out that your recommendation is wrong, then we can change that. But you're the expert, so I'm going to rely on your recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I guess, I sit here, my fundamental question is, I feel the burden as a commissioner to advertise for all these hotels and these restaurants. And I shouldn't have to feel that burden. That's their burden. But Commissioner, if you don't approve this, then the blood's on your hands with our vacancies are down and there's nobody coming to our restaurants. Well, lower your rates, lower your prices. That's capitalism. That's just my fundamental, just basically where I'm at. Whether $82,000 is going to generate, a couple $1 million in revenue, I can see how that happened. But I'm going to support the request. But going forward, I want you to remember the basic core fundamental values that we have as commissioners. To spend taxpayer money and do it wisely. And to throw money against the marketing wall and see what sticks, is something that I just don't, I don't jihad. That's G-E-E-Y. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, and this has nothing to do with you, Jay. I mean, again, I've already apologized once, and I'll say I'm sorry again for being ill-prepared. I'm not going to throw myself in the sword. I can count noses, so this is going to pass, but it has nothing to do with your recommendation. There was an effort shortly after I became a commissioner by, I think it was maybe Governor Scott, to actually eliminate Visit Florida in its entirety and put that onus back on the private sector with regard to the capitalism requisites that we all like and love. And so my negative vote has nothing to do with your professional opinion. I could certainly see the rationale that Commissioner LaCastro brought up, but I'm going to hold.
Commissioner LaCastro.
Well, I think we have a motion on the floor to, did you make a motion?
I haven't made a motion
Okay.
at all.
So I'm going to make a motion to approve. I guess it's the last formal thing I'll do as the TDC chair. Actually, we have one more meeting.
One more meeting.
But the other thing I'll remind my colleagues of is you've already done an incredible job, you and the team that you've joined, squeezing the budget and making sure our money is invested properly. So I echo what Commissioner Hall says. I make a motion to approve this, but much like we've said before, and this isn't negative or anything at you, you and your team are on notice to really make sure we're getting major value. And one of the things I've said at the TDC when we've had all these great ideas, and Commissioner Hall will pick up on this, is we can do anything, but we can't always do everything. And so you don't have an unlimited checkbook, and I'd rather see money sit in an account than see it wasted, or like we say, throw it against the wall and see what happens, although sometimes you don't have a crystal ball either. So I'm going to make the motion to support this $82,000, but similar to what we've said before, it's kind of a one-time good deal. So, or your one-time approval would be my motion, and that you come back here and tell us what you saw. Was this one of the things that was a nice to do, but not a must do? And if we gave you $82,000 for something else, there would be bigger bang for your buck. And then it'll allow you on a discount to go to all those things that you haven't maybe personally witnessed wearing the Collier County badge. But having said that, I expect that you continue to keep us updated on when you do go to those trade shows. I personally want to know, how did it go? Not here at the end of the year or in 2025 when we talk about the budget. Oh, that show 8 months ago, it was worthless. As I've said at the TDC, you never need permission to come to the podium and give us a state of tourism update, especially when you come back from events that we invest quite a bit of money. So my motion will be to approve the $82,000 and then continue to get your assessment on the value of this investment.
Second.
All right. Is the public comment going to be in opposition? Because we're about to pass this. So if you want to oppose this.
Christina Park?
Great. All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Got it.
All right. Thank you, commissioners. Appreciate it.
Commissioners, that brings us, by the time I read this in, to our no sooner than 10 o'clock time certain. We have 3 companion items. That's item 9A, 9B, and 9C. And now I'm going to look at the county attorney and see if I have to read these all in their entirety.
Just a summary would be sufficient.
Okay. Oh, very good.
Life is short.
Yes, all 3 of these items were continued from the November 12th, 2024 BCC meeting. First, 9A is a recommendation to approve an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Collier County, Florida, amending ordinance number 8905 as amended, the Collier County Growth Management Plan for the unincorporated area of Collier County, Florida, specifically amending the future land use element and map series by adding the Fiddler's Creek Section 29 development area and amending the allowable uses in the neutral lands within the rural fringe mixed-use district agricultural rural designation to remove the development restrictions on Section 29 and allow 750 additional residential dwelling units, 22.6% of which will be rent restricted as affordable. Item 9B is a recommendation to approve an ordinance amending the Marco Shores, Fiddler's Creek Planned Unit Development ordinances to increase the number of dwelling units from 6,000 to 6,750 by adding 750 multifamily units with some affordable housing to Section 29, increase the residential development area, decrease park and reconfigure preserve acreage in Section 29, and to add adult congregate living facilities as a land use to the residential district and business district. Item 9C is it's a recommendation to approve a resolution amending Development Order 84-3 as amended for the Marco Shores Fiddler's Creek Development of Regional Impact to add 750 multifamily dwelling units for a total of 6,750 single-family and multifamily dwelling units, to limit the additional 750 multifamily dwelling units to Section 29 only and disallow them from the conservation formula, and revise the master development plan. With that, Chair, did you want to make any opening comments regarding public comment, or County Attorney? Either, and then we have to swear everybody in.
Okay, let's go ahead and swear everybody
Okay.
in.
All of those that are going to be participating, including public speakers, need to stand up and be sworn in by the court reporter.
I do.
Great.
Commissioners, we also have to do ex parte, and then we can get into your comments and get started.
Ex parte, Commissioner Kowal.
Yes, I have on all the items above: meetings, correspondence, and emails.
On 9B.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 9B, 9C.
Great. Commissioner Saunders.
Mr. Chairman, I have the same meetings, correspondence, emails, telephone calls on both items.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Same.
Mr. LoCastro.
Same, all 4 meetings, correspondence, emails, and calls.
Me as well. I've got everything on all of it. With that, I'd like to open up the floor to Commissioner LoCastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had asked Commissioner Hall if he would indulge me to make some opening comments, since I've spent an inordinate amount of time, as is required, on something this complex. And as you see, all of us have. I think this is the first that we have an issue where we all have everything across the board, or at least this deep. So if you'd indulge me, I think I wanted to set the table on a couple of things before we get into this issue, because it's a deep dive. This is a complicated case, and it's bigger than just District 1. I look for all 4 of my colleagues today to do a deep dive, ask tough questions, and get satisfactory answers, because we have to remember every decision we make sets a precedent for many future construction projects. Although this issue today might be district-specific, it affects our overall county. That's why all 5 of us vote on everything when we are in these chambers, regardless of district. This is the very reason why I personally delayed this discussion for over a month, to give all sides a chance to have more discussions, meet with us, and for us to spend more time with the county staff to understand this request for rezone and changes to the possible growth and possible changes to the growth management plan, among other things. I trust we've all done that. I know I've used this additional time to further meet with multitudes of citizens and those even more deeply involved who are here today, to fully hear their concerns, but also ensure all sides understand what we can and at times what we can't do. The many emails we all received show there is quite a few citizens who care deeply about this area, but some who don't fully understand the environmental, legal, and moving parts of the issue at times. Sending us all emails demanding a traffic study first, or talking about how this is a panther preserve, shows the confusion. Any traffic study would come after a rezone, and I think we will hear today, although anything with grass, water, trees, etc., obviously contains wildlife and vegetation, there's a major difference between a protected preserve like the Everglades and an undeveloped parcel of land with vegetation. However, We aren't looking to arbitrarily allow construction on every undeveloped parcel of land. But landowners also have rights when they pay for a piece of property to be able to do something with it. We can't vote no to everything just because somebody took a poll or handed us a petition. That said, this has many moving, unique parts. And the key today is we aren't voting on a construction project and the many details of one. We are voting on allowing a parcel of land currently zoned for a park, a golf course, boat storage, and a multitude of other things to possibly be rezoned so the landowner can then pursue the extremely complicated continued steps before any shovels would ever go in the ground or not. Many of those steps have huge hurdles which could easily stop any project. Today, our main decision is to determine if a rezone should be approved to allow the landowner the opportunity to explore all of the needed future steps to pursue possible construction. There is quite a bit of misinformation out there whenever something comes to us for a vote. Much of it at times swirls around the role of the Planning Commission. I first want to thank the Planning Commission for spending 3 days in discussions with all sides to give us their recommendation. First, however, Planning Commission members are volunteers. They're not commissioners. Many of the emails we received talked about telling us how to, quote, follow the lead of those commissioners. The only commissioners in the county are sitting right here. The Planning Commission role is to allow both sides a preliminary step to, in essence, dry run their proposals and allow Planning Commission members who are volunteers appointed by us to begin the initial process of questions and answers, which leads to their recommendation and gives the 5 of us, the actual elected commissioners, Planning Commission perspective, not a decision or a final vote. That's our job. I often say presentations before the Planning Commission is a formal practice or dry run. Yes, a very critical part of the process, but presenting here is what leads to the actual vote and decision. Often, and as is expected, between the Planning Commission's overview and questions, both sides then have a time to regroup, reassess, and even retool their presentations for our consideration and final vote. The other main differences are these 5 county commissioners spent a massive amount of time speaking with the county staff before any vote. Over this extra past month that I provided by moving this to today's meeting, every commissioner up here used that extra time to do a deeper dive with not only county staff, but the citizens who have concerns with the rezone and the other things to be decided today. That time with staff and citizens is something the Planning Commission doesn't do at the level these elected county commissioners accomplish. So hearing the first volley of presentations by the Planning Commission is far different than what we will hear today, and the 5 of us have much more depth in not only the issues, but especially the law as to what is feasible and what is not. We're not here today to direct traffic studies, debate the size of an apartment building, how many trees could be planted around a structure, or what the setback distances might be or not. Should we decide a rezone is feasible, all of those discussions come later, as well as a huge uphill battle by the landowner as they possibly pursue required additional approvals in many other areas before anything could ever be considered for construction. I applaud the citizens who are here today. We often hear from citizens demanding us to vote a certain way, telling us if we make, in their eyes, the wrong decision, it will ruin their entire community for 100 years. Yet often in the same email, they remind us they won't be able to attend the meeting today, and often some questions embedded in their email are off base because they don't fully understand the issues being considered or the sequence of events. I don't fault those citizens for that, but instead, I strongly applaud the ones who are here today, who have been visiting our offices regularly, and who understand the many moving parts, especially environmentally, when it comes to our consideration to allow a rezone of this property for possible future construction or not. We have a lot of details to dive into today, many which this panel already have done, but which we must get on the record during this formal proceeding. There is no rush to judgment here. And as I've told every single person I've met with, coming to this meeting as a commissioner with any premature determination of how you will vote is irresponsible. We've all heard pieces of the puzzle from all sides and received tons of emails. But hearing everything collectively together today in this room has no substitute. I look for my colleagues to do a deep dive in questioning, because although this issue today might be in District 1, the next similar case to come before us might very well be in their district. I look to the speakers who come to the podiums to be professional, factual, and concise in your presentations. We all know what happened in the 3 days of the Planning Commission, and as I said, those discussions and their eventual recommendation gave us perspective. But today we are here to work towards an actual decision and vote. Let's not let discussions today get off track or wander down multiple unrelated premature paths that we aren't here to decide yet, or maybe even at all. I look forward to both sides outlining their positions, and as I've said for myself and my colleagues, to continue the deep dive analysis we have done outside of this room separately and collectively bring together our brain power and understanding of the environmental issues and legalities involved to come to the best decision possible. Thank you.
Commissioner Saunders.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make one or two quick comments. In reference to the Planning Commission, I don't want the members of the Planning Commission to think in any way that we don't value their input. Commissioner LaCastro, you indicated that you considered the Planning Commission to be a dry run. And I just want to say that it's not just a dry run. I know those were your words, and I just want to make sure it's on the record that the Planning Commission input is critically important. It's not just a dry run from my personal consideration. It's the critical step, and I want the Planning Commissioners individually to know that we really value what they do for us.
Sir, my sentence, if you continue with the rest of that sentence, is it was a dry run, but a critical piece in the entire process. So we might differ on the words dry run, but obviously it's not a vote and it's not a decision.
I disagree with using the terms a dry run.
Okay.
To me, that means if I was sitting there and the commissioner said this was a dry run, I don't care what comes after that, I'd probably resign from the Planning Commission. Why have that dry run for developers? It is not a dry run. It is a critical piece. I understand that you had some other words with that, but you did use the words dry run, and I just want to make clear that that's not what it is.
Noted.
All right, procedurally, the way this is going to work is we're going to hear from the applicant, we're going to hear from the county. Applicant can ask some questions after that, and if there's anybody that's here to speak that represents 5 or more people, you've got 15 minutes to present your case, and that's including expert witness. Every individual we want to hear from every individual who wants to speak on this matter. Every individual has 3 minutes. There will be no ceding of time, so we're not going to have 30 people cede 3 minutes to a speaker who pontificates for 90 minutes. So every individual has that right to speak, and we want to hear from you. But that's 3 minutes individually. If there's somebody that represents 5 or more people, an attorney or a homeowners association or whatever, you got 15 minutes, and that's a lot of time to talk. Remember, the Gettysburg Address is the greatest speech of all time, and it was delivered in less than 3 minutes. However, we want to hear that. It's important to us. Commissioner LaCastro did a great job of laying it out with the posture that we have. I have no idea how this is going to go, but we're going to listen. We're going to ask questions. We're going to get as clear and as much clarity as we possibly can, because this is a big decision, whether it goes one way or whether it goes the other. And we take it to heart. And however this turns out to be this morning and this afternoon, is because we've taken great diligence and great care to arrive at whatever decision that we come to. So with that, Mr. Yovanovich, let's hear your stuff.
Good morning. For the record, Rich Ivanovich on behalf of the petitioner. Terry gets a break in 15 minutes.
Yes.
Would it be possible to take that break now so I don't get started and then stop 15 minutes into the presentation? And then,
You're not going to hurt her feelings doing that.
no, but I
do
just,
that.
that's my request, is that if we could take the break a little
Let's take a
early.
break and we'll be back at 10:25.
Thank you.
Chair, you have a live mic.
Commissioner LoCastro.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. Just to get on the record, and because we always say up here, words do matter. I read a 5-page speech, and I hope people got more out of it than just the 2 words, dry run. But for the sake of the record, if preliminary step of the county planning commission is more correct. I'm not looking for a mass exodus of the planning commission, but merely to put in context. So I hope that the people that heard me heard everything else, which to me was the meat of what I had to say. So it is an important preliminary step, as I said afterwards, that to complete that sentence. So for the record, I'll say instead of dry run, maybe preliminary step is better wordology. But I hope nobody missed the message of my opening comments. And due to the thanks and appreciation I got from several people who came up to me afterwards, thanking me for my comments, I think it was heard by proper ears. So thank you.
Ready? Yes. Before I get too much into our presentation, I just want to kind of clarify the process. I understood if you represent 5 or more individuals, you get 15 minutes, and that includes your experts. I assume that person who says that's going to identify the 5 that they represent, and that someone else can't come up later and say, I represent those same 5 individuals, to also get another 15 minutes. I'm assuming it's just...
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. For the record, again, Rich Jovanovich on behalf of the applicant. The applicant is FCC Preserve LLC. Joe Parisi is the applicant's representative. I'm the land use attorney on this matter. Mr. Arnold is our professional planner. Mark Miner is our professional engineer. Jim Banks is our traffic expert, and Tim Hall is our environmental consultant. You've heard from them many times on their individuals' areas of expertise, and I am tendering them as our experts in those specific areas. Our presentation will be fairly detailed. It will address all of the requested changes in the PUD. However, the Planning Commission recommended approval of all the changes that were not related to Section 29, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time in our presentation addressing those other minor changes related to senior housing and floor area ratio and things like that. We are going to spend a fair amount of time discussing the history of Section 29 and what was committed to as part of the PUD approval process in 1998, and what is committed to as part of a separate Army Corps of Engineer permitting process with regard to Section 29. They are 2 separate processes. They are 2 separate commitments. And in my humble opinion, I think at the Planning Commission level, there was a confusion as to melding both of those separate processes into a county-related commitment. I will also address, and I think very early on at the Planning Commission, there was a question of Mr. Bosey, would you be recommending approval of this project if it didn't include affordable housing? And Mr. Bosey said, no, we would not be recommending approval of this if it didn't include affordable housing. And I think the Planning Commission went off on a tangent focusing on, well, that means the rest of the project wasn't worthwhile, it's only affordable housing. What Mr. Bosey was responding to was your requirement in your growth management plan that says if we request through a growth management plan amendment an increase in density, we have to provide affordable housing to support that increase in density. So he had no alternative but other than to say, no, I would not be recommending approval because he was legally bound to recommend denial had we not included an affordable housing density bonus as part of our 2 petitions, the Growth Management Plan Amendment as well as the PUD. Mr. Bosey never said this wasn't a good project and the only reason I'm recommending approval is because it included an affordable housing density bonus commitment as part of this project. As I mentioned, there are several amendments that we're proposing today related to Section 29, which is 49.9 acres. We are asking to be allowed to put 750 dwelling units on that 49.9 acres. Currently, the growth management plan does not allow density on that parcel. We are proposing a 30% affordable housing commitment. That is 15% at the 100% and below median income and 15% at the 80% and below income. If all 750 units are built, that is 225 income restricted units, which I believe is probably the highest private sector proposed affordable housing commitment in Collier County. We're modifying map H to, and Mr. Arnold will take you through this process. There's a business area parcel out front of Fiddler's Creek on Collier Boulevard. We're modifying the boundaries of a few of those tracks to make it work better for potential future businesses as well as for a senior housing project at that entrance, and that's what that's related to. We're modifying map H to, and the PUD master plan to address that change as well as the changes related to section 29. We're updating the acreages based upon the modifications we're asking to section 29 and other areas throughout these PUD changes. We're asking to increase what is today a 6,000 unit DRI to 6,750 units, and that's to address the 750 units on section 29. We're asking we already can convert multifamily to single family and stay within the 6,000 units. We want to do the same for the ability to convert single family to multifamily, staying within the 6,000 units. That's this conversion does not apply to section 29. We're modifying the senior housing commitment to have it be a floor area ratio, which is what is typically done for senior housing. And I think finally, and very importantly, we are making significant improvements to Auto Ranch Road to address the traffic that will be coming to and from section 29. These are mandatory commitments. These aren't something that we may do or may not do. These are mandatory commitments that are in the PUD, and we'll go through in great detail what those commitments are and how Auto Ranch Road will be improved, will be much safer, it won't flood, and there'll be overall improvements for those who live along Auto Ranch Road. We are providing a CAT bus stop at the intersection of Auto Ranch Road and US 41, and we're providing 480 general population cots, 84 special needs cots, and a towable generator related to our request to provide additional density on section 29. The existing growth management plan designation for this property is agricultural, rural designation, rural fringe mixed use district, neutral lands. What neutral lands are in the rural fringe mixed use district regulatory scheme are not sending lands. Sending lands are the environmentally sensitive lands. Rural fringe neutral lands are not environmentally sensitive lands. And in fact, other than in section 29, you can put residential housing in neutral lands, and you can do density blending in neutral lands for purposes of developing residential uses. Our current zoning is the Fiddler's Creek PUD and DRI. Our overall project acreage is 3,932 acres. Our proposed growth management plan amendment applies to 49.9 of those acres. You're the best, thank you. And our and so the overall acreage remains the same. Our dwelling unit count today is 6,000 units. I will take you through the history of Fiddler's Creek to show you how it went from basically 9,000 vested units down to the current 6,000 vested units. And we're asking to increase the overall dwelling units to 6,750 because of what we're asking to do on Section 29. This is a little bit unique. We're not asking you to increase the overall density that the growth management plan would allow us to generate on the acreage that consists of Fiddler's Creek, because we have enough density based upon the growth management plan designations of urban, neutral lands related to this project. However, we are asking you to increase the density on Section 29 because currently we're not allowed to have any units on Section 29. So we can generate almost 6,900 units from the current acreage within Fiddler's Creek. Because we're asking to put some of those 900 units on Section 29, we are increasing the density. Therefore, we have to provide an affordable housing density commitment that Mr. Bosey was asked about and commented on at the Planning Commission. From an overall density on the project, we can calculate it a bunch of different ways. If you want to calculate it purely based upon the existing acreage within the PUD, by adding the 750 units, we go from 1.53 dwelling units per acre to 1.72 dwelling units per acre. If you want to look at it solely based upon what can come from Section 29, we are going to 2.25 dwelling units within Section 29. And if you want to look at just the 49.9 acres within Section 29, we're asking for 15 dwelling units per acre. 15 dwelling units per acre is not an abnormal number of dwelling units per acre for a multifamily rental project in Collier County. So what we're asking for is in line with previously approved projects, and the overall project density is having a very minimal increase in overall density. Fiddler's Creek on this is everything outlined in red. The yellow is Section 29. Fiddler's Creek was originally approved in 1984 at 9,110 dwelling units. There were several amendments to the project over time, adding acreage, and as part of that amendment process, in 1989, the units went down to 7,000 units. In 1996, it went down to 6,000 units. It's remained at 6,000 units since 1996. However, acreage has been added, including the acreage we're discussing in Section 29. Over time, there was basically 2,266 acres added to Fiddler's Creek without any request to increase density, so that density was being spread out over an increase in acreage. As I mentioned, did I get it right, Troy? Where you see the arrow, there is a gray area. That is where Section 29 is. That is neutral lands on your current future land use map, and neutral lands are not environmentally sensitive lands. They are lands that can be developed under your current rural fringe mixed-use district regulatory scheme. Immediately across the street are receiving lands. That's where you encourage development to occur. That's basically where the 6,000 acres currently is, and that's slated for development in the future. The environmentally sensitive lands are here. Those are the sending lands in the rural fringe mixed-use district regulatory scheme, and that is where you generate TDRs, and that is where you want to put your preserves. You'll note that right here, it's hard for me to be very you could see that on the neutral lands in the gray area and the receiving lands in the blue area, it's bisected by US 41. The sending lands under your rural fringe mixed-use district regulatory scheme are all on the north side of US 41. Tim Hall is going to get into greater detail as his part of his presentation about environmentally sensitive lands and what this specific lands in Section 29R. And Tim will provide the expert testimony that this is not Panther habitat land for purposes of the regulatory scheme as far as primary or secondary Panther habitat. I will note that as we go through this process and why it takes us so long to get through this process, you have professionals on your own staff, environmental, transportation, planning, that we work with and we go through this process, and every one of your experts has concluded that this is a project that they're recommending approval. Your environmental staff is not saying this is environmentally sensitive land. This shall be protected at all costs. As Commissioner LaCastro pointed out, as we go through this process, just like every other project that comes before you, we start with the zoning approval. Sometimes there's a growth management plan amendment that goes with that. We start with that zoning approval. Then we go to the state and federal, applicable state and federal regulatory agencies. And if they say no, well, then I don't have a project. If they say yes, then I have a project. So should we be fortunate enough today to get an approval from the from the Board of County Commissioners, we still have to deal with the state and federal agencies, and we will have to amend an existing Army Corps of Engineers permit, which I'll get into in a little bit greater detail, for this project to be able to move forward. This is a close-up of Section 29 outlined in yellow. The dotted yellow line is the 49.9 acres that we're requesting to put the residential units on. You will see that we're asking to put those residential units on what was previously cleared agricultural lands. There will be some minor clearing. There's a farm road buried in those trees. That farm road will get removed and a real road will be placed in that area. And as Mr. Minor will point out, that farm road currently is acting as a dam. When we rebuild that road, it will actually have culverts underneath it to allow for water that overflows right now from that long lake to continue to flow through the preserve area in Section 29 and ultimately through state lands and into the Gulf. Section 29, when it was originally approved, had multiple designations on it, and I'll take you through that master plan in a section, but suffice it to say that where you see the trees, that was originally in 1998 designated reserve. Now they call them preserves. And where you see the farm field, that was designated active recreational as well as lake. So the farm field was always intended in 1998 to have some form of development on that property. This was the master plan that was approved in 1998. That's where the trees are. That's designated preserve. That's where the farm field is. That's designated park. That's where the farm field is. And that was designated lake. So in 1998, based upon the PUD master plan, Section 29 was partially a preserve, partially a lake, and partially a park in which active recreational uses can occur on that site, including boat storage and boat launching facilities, tennis facilities, pickleball facilities, you name it, any active recreational use under the PUD can occur on that property. This was repeatedly stated by myself and my team and your staff at the Planning Commission meeting. Anybody who tells you otherwise, that in the PUD, all of Section 29 was committed to be a preserve, is factually incorrect. As I mentioned, Section 29 was not, the entirety of Section 29 was not designated a preserve. It's neither primary or secondary panther habitat. It's designated neutral lands in the Rural Fringe Mixed Use District. I mentioned typically neutral lands allow for residential development, and Section 29 allows for active recreational uses. There's a separate permit that was for the estancia portion of Fiddler's Creek. Estancia is not Section 29. Estancia is another residential community. Originally, estancia, the permit said, thou shalt buy Panther credits. The Panther credit system is a bank where more important lands have been restored as Panther habitat, and developers buy those Panther credits. So these Panther banks and better Panther habitat are provided for the cat. Initially, the developer said, you know, maybe I won't do the recreational uses as part of the core permit. They elected to put Section 29 as preserve under the core permit instead of buying the credits. The developer in 2019 started talking to me 5 years ago about, hey, we got an affordable housing crisis. I'm feeling it. Everybody in Collier County are feeling it. What do I need to do to be able to develop a portion of Section 29 that's already been cleared as an affordable housing project? I said, we're going to have to do a couple of things. You're going to have to amend the growth management plan, because right now it currently says no residential. You're going to have to amend the PUD, because it currently says you can only have active recreational uses on that. And you're going to have to amend the existing Army Corps of Engineers permit, because right now you've made a commitment. I said, okay, I want to start that process. Well, we're almost hitting 6 years into this process, and we're working on the core permit. We're going to have to remove 58 acres of Section 29 from the existing core permit. Now, I think a fact that needs to be pointed out is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has never said to us, we are never going to agree to amend the Army Corps of Engineers permit. They've never said that. They said we would recommend doing it if you purchase 120 acres in Glades County for a purchase price at that time for $1,600,000. That was the cost to amend the Army Corps of Engineers permit at that time. Keep in mind that the value of Panther credits for the 58 acres to be removed from the core permit was $100,000. My client had offered $200,000, and that wasn't good enough. He was not willing to pay $1.6 million for a parcel of property in Glades County. And we are in that process. And then we got another, which is not unusual from federal agencies, we got another letter that says you're in the wrong process. Because the Army Corps of Engineers permit has closed for the Estancia project, you're going to have to start the process all over. You can't amend that permit. You're going to have to start over again with a new Army Corps of Engineering permit. We will do that if we get approved today. We will start over with the Army Corps of Engineers, and if we're successful with them, we will have a project. If we're not successful with them, we will not have a project, and that will be the end of the story. It makes no sense for us to go through that process, have the Army Corps of Engineers say yes, and then come back here today to possibly be told no by the Board of County Commissioners. So that's why we're here today. If this project makes sense to the Board of County Commissioners, and we think the evidence is there that it should, we will go through the process of hopefully amending the existing Army Corps of Engineers permit. So I hope I've made this clear. There's the PUD commitment with regard to what can be allowed zoning-wise on Section 29 today. And zoning-wise on Section 29 today, active recreational is a permitted use on that property that we're talking about today. Under the core permit, it is not. We're going to have to amend that permit. So anybody who is saying that in 1998, my client committed to the Board of County Commissioners that the entirety of Section 29 would be in a preserve is not accurate. You can read the PUD for yourself. And even if we were supposed to put a PUD, a conservation easement on the lands that were identified as a preserve in 1998, the lands we're talking to you today about would not be part of that conservation easement. And I'll show you the actual provisions in the existing PUD, the 1998 PUD, when these lands were added to the Fiddler's Creek PUD. Section 5.5 talks about the reserve district, and it says we will place a conservation easement on the property pursuant to section 3.2.8.4.7.3 of your Collier County Land Development Code. Clear as day. For the Fiddler's Creek addition, which was the lands that were being added, we will do it pursuant to section 3.2.8.4.7.3. What that section says, and your staff agrees, it says, this is what it says. It says we'll do it when we are platting or developing that portion of the project. We are not platting or developing that portion of the project yet. Therefore, no, we're not tardy in providing a conservation easement on that property. That doesn't mean we can develop anything on that property because the zoning document in the PUD limits Section 29 to these uses. This is what we can do in Section 29 under the PUD, and I've highlighted those portions of what can go on the existing farm field in Section 29. We can do launching and storage facilities for watercraft, and we can do active recreational activities. I thought that was fixed. That typo is still there. And not only there, it's highlighted so you can see there's a typo. And then any other conservation, recreation, or related open space use is currently allowed on that piece of property under the PUD. The proposed change to the growth management plan is in the, it's obviously in the ordinance. I've highlighted a couple of sections of it for you to show you what I previously mentioned was the 15% income restriction for those making 80% or below, and the 15% for those making 100% or below. And we have the typical essential service personnel definition for those who will be eligible to reside in these units. I will tell you that if you, I guess you guys jointly, you, the county, jointly developed a property on the Bembridge PUD out on Santa Barbara, and I think it was 82 units, and you had 300 applicants for those 82 units. The other projects like Allura and other projects that have these units, either constructed or getting ready to construct, like the project up on Immokalee Road, there's way more demand than the number of income restricted units that are being developed so far. And this project will be very important to the success of starting to address the critical housing shortage that we have in Collier County. And I would point out that the DRI development order that was approved as part of the Fiddler's Creek DRI has a housing commitment that says the developer shall explore the economic feasibility of providing residences within Fiddler's Creek that are affordable by middle or lower income families. So we are fulfilling that obligation that is in the DRI development order as part of this process. The income levels, as you can see, for a family of four making 80% or less, it's $79,850. It may have gone up a little bit since this table was published in 23. And for those making 100% or less, it's $99,805. And in the PUD, I wanted to point out, we had added to this PUD, and it has become pretty common, that we also consider essential service personnel, military veterans. So there is a significant portion of our essential people in this county, nurses, firefighters, teachers, police officers, and skilled building trades that we need for our county to function. And this project will provide 225 units for that much needed workforce. And I agree with I agree with everything that Commissioner Castro said at the opening, except for I will tell you, I want to tell you that I have all the respect in the world for the Planning Commission and going through that process. It's arduous. We don't always agree, and that's fine. We get feedback back and forth, and I try to understand where they're coming from. I think they got a little off track on why this was being recommended for approval by the staff, and why I think they got a little confused as to what were the PUD commitments for preserve. But the Planning Commission recognizes the need for affordable housing, and the definitions that we've come up have been with great input from the Planning Commission. And as Commissioner LaCastro pointed out, this is a countywide problem. This is not a District 1, a District 2, a District 3, District 4, District 5 problem. This is critical to all of our quality of life in Collier County. If we do not provide housing for these essential workers, we're not going to have the quality of life we currently have in Collier County. We're not going to have the quality of schools. We're not going to have the quality sheriff's department and police forces that we have. We're not going to have the quality EMS that we have, or the quality care when we go to our hospitals. This is a countywide problem, and all portions of Collier County where there's a good piece of property where it makes sense to have housing that provides for essential service personnel, that needs to happen. There's not a lot of land left in the urban area. That's why you see us going east and you see us going south for this to occur. Wayne's going to take you through the master plan, the changes we're going to talk to. He's going to show you an exhibit that shows you within a 10-mile radius all the employers that are close to this parcel of property. But keep in mind, and I'm sure we've all driven north in the mornings during the week, on I-75, you see all those cars coming south. They're not coming here to go to the beach, they're coming here to work. And Mr. Bozie has pointed out on many occasions, we're probably 50,000 units short in providing affordable housing, and we're going to have to do this one project at a time to make a dent. I don't think we're ever going to get where we address all 50,000 of those people. But I guarantee you those 50,000 people that are driving south from Fort Myers are driving to employment that's a lot further away than if they were living here on this particular piece of property for them to go to work at. With that, unless you have any questions of me at this point, I'll Wayne come up and we'll take you through our presentation. Hopefully we'll address most of your questions and comments, and but of course interrupt us at any time and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Commissioner LaCastro.
Mr. Ivanovich, can you go to slide 1, which was titled Summary of Proposed Request? So just for the record, and I want to hear your understanding because I believe the other side maybe has a different take, but during the extremely critical and important preliminary step of the Planning Commission, what was their take on, like I said before, this isn't just one vote on one thing, and your opening comment sort of said that. But can you give a quick summary on the things that are on here that weren't subject to their concern, confusion, recommendation against? Because there's quite a bit on here that are separate decisions. Can you give a rough overview of what?
I could tell you what they approved.
Right.
I can tell you I think there was even some confusion as to what they were approving, and we had to slow down a process because there was a focus on Section 29.
And the reason I think it's important you state that is before the other side comes up, I think they should hear what you say so they can either rebut it or say, well, he's got us there. And I don't know what their position is, but I think this is a critical piece and interpretation of the preliminary step the Planning Commission provides.
They recommended approval to revise map H with regard to what Wayne's going to show you, the business park parcel at the entrance of Fiddler's Creek. They approved the change to the master plan. They approved, other than Section 29, they approved the floor area ratio that was part of senior housing. They approved the conversion from single family to multifamily because it had nothing to do with Section 29. They partially approved, if you will, the updates to the acreage other than the updates relating to Section 29. And they approved the master plan changes other than the Section 29 related master plan changes. And Wayne will get into this, or maybe I'll just get into this real quick before I turn it over to Wayne. Oops, I gotta go. Sorry. This is the proposed master plan that's before you today. Right about here, there, if you look back in, I think, 2018, that connecting road didn't exist. We went through the process of having plats approved within the PUD that showed that road. Those plats came to the Board of County Commissioners. They were all approved. Actually, that road itself is an administrative amendment that could occur. And what we're doing is we're truing up, if you will, the master plan to be consistent with the board-approved plats that show that connection road. That is an administrative amendment that does not require board approval, but we did receive board approval through that platting process. So that came up as a discussion point. Your staff agrees that this we're basically just truing up the master plan to address that. And then Wayne will take you through the changes to this portion, obviously of the PUD, and then specifically to what's occurring in Section 29. Does that answer your questions, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you.
Anything else before I?
Yes, Mr. Yovanovich, you said that this is not designated as Panther lands, but Panthers exist.
Panthers exist throughout Collier County.
Okay. So the 50 acres that we're talking about where the 750 units are being proposed, that's over ag land. That's not over vegetated land?
That's correct. That's been already cleared.
And then if you'll go just a couple of, maybe it's a couple of slides forward, you showed in the master plan of 1998, yeah, that one along with the lakes. Can you go back to the first map and kind of overlay those for me?
I don't know that I can overlay them, but I can describe.
No, I'm just saying, just with your arrow there.
Okay. Where I showed you the lakes and the parks,
Right.
all this is lakes and parks.
Okay.
This
And then-
was, on the master plan, was where
Originally, the master plan was going to be in the vegetated area.
the preserve was going to be in the vegetated area.
Okay. And we're talking about 50 acres for the site, but we're talking about 58 acres to reapply with the Army Corps of Engineers out to take out a preserve. Is that the same? Is the 50 acres part of the 58 acres?
49.9. 49.9 acres is this area. And then it's hard to see, but you can see the farm road that kind of goes from here to here.
Right.
That's the other 8 acres.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, that's the other 8 acres. So that's the access road that will connect to Auto Ranch Road.
Okay. That clear. All right. Thank you.
All right. Okay, let me get you back to where Wayne. All yours. You want me to get my water? Or you want?
Good morning. I'm Wayne Arnold. I'm a certified planner with Grady Minor and Associates here representing the applicant. And starting with the slide that we have, this is our proposed master plan. Rich highlighted a couple of areas, primarily the area near the entrance for Fiddler's Creek on Collier Boulevard. We're realigning that. A big portion of that that's currently designated just above the arrow, that's currently designated as a business tract, so that would allow commercial shopping centers and other office uses. We don't think the market's there for a large-scale commercial property along that entrance, so we're re-identifying most of that tract as a residential tract that would also allow the senior housing project. We think that makes a lot more sense on Collier Boulevard than a large-scale commercial. And then just south of there, we've reconfigured and retained a small amount of the red business park, or we call it business tract area, that would allow for additional offices and some miscellaneous retail that would serve primarily the residents of Fiddler's Creek. The small red area that's located, just these arrows are not very precise, but in that area, that's where the current offices are. If you go there, the Gulf Bay offices and some of their other administration functions for Fiddler's Creek are located there. The other change that Rich mentioned, there was a true-up of this overall master plan. So this iteration, this is one of the first digital versions of the master plan that has been created. These were all hand-drawn exhibits starting back in the early 1990s. So this has been trued up based on the actual configuration of the golf course tract, the platted residential tracts, et cetera. So that reflects the internal road system that has been platted. So that explains how that connection point was made. And as Rich said, not to get too into the weeds, but your code allows for administrative changes as you plat property to deal with configuration of internal roadways for these large master plans, set aside of the final preserve areas and things of that nature. So that's what was handled there. And then the larger change, obviously, is everything what we call Section 29. So it's not a full section, but it is located in Section 29. And a good portion of that was designated, which we've been through, as a park area. Part of it was a preserve area, then called reserve. So on the master plan today, we're reflecting the area that will be retained as preserve and green, and then the residential tract, which would be the tan color, and then park areas that would be retained as open space around the 49.9 acre development tract. So here, and unfortunately not a color exhibit from back in the day, but showing you the two primary areas that we're reconfiguring on the plan. Here's a little closer up version of what's going on the entrance on Collier Boulevard that, again, Planning Commission, and I don't think any of the residences in Fiddler's Creek had an issue with it. We reconfigured the business tract, which was, you can see, a large B tract, in favor of keeping a small B and then converting the balance of that to residential. And I think that's been well accepted by everyone. Here's Section 29. So Rich had already showed you, in essence, this on the left depicts everything in this area was called reserve back in the day. Everything to the right was open space and lake. And that open space area, as you have heard, allowed everything from active recreation to agriculture, would have allowed polo fields, golf courses, et cetera. So active recreation for sure. And then, of course, we're modifying that to identify the 49.9 acre tract that would have the 750 units and then still retaining the P park designation for the surrounding lands. So the tract does not directly abut, the development tract does not directly abut our neighbors to the north, and I know that they're represented here in the audience. Here's a little bit of perspective on our Section 29 development area. And so the Royal Palm Estates to our north, Boyne South, for those of us who've been in town long enough, we started laying out where our 49 acre tract is, and you can see the large yellow line to the north represents the 49 acre tract line. When we apply setbacks where we can put the apartments, it becomes this area. So you can see the separation from the property line, which is the canal, it's 361, let's call it 350 feet at a minimum, up to 500 feet away from the neighboring properties to the north. We will be providing a 15-foot wide type B buffer that separates multifamily from single-family use. Doesn't matter that we're separated by 500 feet. That's what the code requires, and that's what we're happy to provide. We also created this cross-section, and I'm not going to take you through all of the cross-section, but it extends. North is to your left on the cross-section. North is up on the color exhibit. But what we did identified, as you move across the site from north to south, you go from the canal to the north, across the open space areas, you get into our development tract and our landscape buffers that will be provided adjacent to our neighbors. We went out and took photographs of the existing property. So this is from Royal Palm Estates looking south across the canal that you could see in the prior aerial. We had conceptual elevations. The buildings have not been designed, but these were designed to be 4-story over parking buildings. So we have morphed into the imagery what that looks like at the distances, and these are approximate, but so that would be the image that's viewed from the neighboring properties looking south toward the 750 proposed units in Fiddler's Creek. So there was discussion by experts representing some of the other neighbors about how this was incompatible and multifamily is out of place here. And I would only tell you that the same people who were objecting have a multifamily tract in their community and that their density is very similar to what's allowed in Fiddler's Creek. We don't think that this is incompatible, and in fact, our proposed height that we're asking for, currently in Fiddler's Creek, multifamily units can be up to 100 feet high, and there are certain setbacks that are applicable, but the relationship of our multifamily to single family is much greater in this concept than you would find in the balance of Fiddler's Creek. We also heard a lot about this as an inappropriate land use change because it's an isolated area. It's too hard to get to. So I did a little Google mapping and determined that from the homes down here on Royal Hammock Way to get out to US 41 and up to the intersection at Auto Ranch Road and US 41, it's 1.99 miles. So if you leave our community that we're proposing and get to the same intersection at Auto Ranch Road, it's about 1.95 miles. So I don't consider that to be something that's an isolated district. As you can also see that we don't extend farther to the east of the Boyne South community to the north. And as Rich briefly mentioned, the areas to the north that contain 6L Farms, as we all know it, that qualifies for a village under your growth management plan, and I fully expect that in the next several years you'll see a proposal for them to develop more housing and more commercial east on US 41. We also looked at a 10-mile radius around the project, and when you look at a 10-mile radius, we also associated drive times to demonstrate that from an employment standpoint, we have a lot of employers that are within 10 miles, and when you look at our time, we have Section 29 time and distances. We also had the Royal Palm Golf Estate time and distances that we did from Google mapping, and you can see that the times are within a minute difference to drive from their community or from Section 29. I don't think that's a significant difference, and I don't think that points us out as an isolated area. But interesting, though, when you look within that 10-mile drive radius, we have all of Marco Island, and I think we're all aware how many hotels and other businesses that we have there, as well as schools, hospital, Physicians Regional up on Collier Boulevard is also there, the multitude of retail opportunities, Laley High School, and other things that fall within this drive time area. So again, demonstrating that we're not an isolated district, that we're very much in the center of the mix. And as Rich pointed out, you know, as a business owner that's located barely across the Collier County line in Bonita Springs, you know, it's a struggle to retain people. It's a struggle to hire people. And for those people that unfortunately have to drive here from Cape Coral, Lehigh Acres, other parts in Lee County, it's a chore, and it's significantly more than 10 miles. And I can tell you from somebody who does it In the evenings, a lot of times, it's probably closer to an hour drive. So if I can drive less than half an hour to be within a major employment center, this really does look good, especially for our first responders and other folks who would be getting the first opportunity to rent these facilities. A lot of good planning considerations. You know, we had objectors that talked about our density was too high. Well, we showed you how we calculated the density for both overall Fiddler's Creek or just on the Section 29 density. And I would tell you that under your growth management plan, the only exception, because we are in the coastal hazard area for increased density, is for provision of affordable housing. Your emergency management department reviewed this application. They're the ones who made the recommendation for the emergency generator purchases as well as the cots to put those, because you don't want to put more people at risk for the sheltering, but you do want to make sure you have facilities elsewhere for them. So that's been well coordinated, and we're consistent with your growth management plan provisions for that. From a compatibility standpoint, I don't think this is an issue. It is very compatible. The separation that we're providing between multifamily housing and residential housing is greater than you would find required under your typical land development code. And in fact, Fiddler's Creek puts units much closer than we are for our neighboring property. This isn't an isolated district. The drive time exhibits and the other just distance to get back to US 41 from both communities demonstrates that we're not creating an isolated area. And I think we also need to point out that you'll hear a little bit more about it, but in addition to the affordable housing commitment that's been made, we will be reconstructing large portions of Otter Ranch Road to eliminate flooding and make it safer by installation of sidewalk. We committed to providing a CAT bus stop that, though not currently serviced on the roadway at Otter Ranch Road, there will be the opportunity for the future CAT stop there, and that'll be coordinated with Florida Department of Transportation. And then you'll hear Mark Miner talk to you about stormwater benefits that are going to accrue from the improvements we're making to Otter Ranch Road. So, you know, we heard a lot of interesting things, but I think as Rich mentioned, I think much of the discussion at the Planning Commission got sidetracked on this whole, the preserve was committed, and I think it's been clear that this was not intended, all of Section 29 was never intended to be part of a preserve. They're going to tell you that, you know, me personally stood up in 1998 and said they're proposing not to put residential density here. I did that in my capacity as what Mike Bosey is for you today. The application that was before us by Fiddler's Creek then said we're adding this acreage, we're not intending to spread density out there. That was 20 plus years ago, and here we are. We're proposing to put in some affordable housing that we all need, and we know we need it. And I think we've got a good project and hope you can support it. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have for me.
Good job, Wayne.
So that goes forward and down. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mark Miner. I'm a civil engineer representing the petitioners. And I was asked to start off talking about access to the property, Section 29, from US 41 down to Section 29. The proposed access is by Otter Ranch Road. It's an existing 20-foot wide paved roadway with open swales and a 60-foot right-of-way. It is a public road right-of-way. It's deeded to the county back in the early 80s. I've shown some pictures up here, photographs at US 41 and at the end, and then along quarter points. The asphalt and the structural elements of the road are in pretty good shape. We feel that the road is a little narrow. The shoulders are not in very good shape. The roadside drainage is not in that very good shape. So it needs, in our opinion, to operate and to service our proposed community would need substantial upgrades. And I'd like to go through those if I could, if I can find, oh, there it is. On this slide is the improvements that we're proposing for Otter Ranch Road and US 41. At the intersection along US 41, pretty standard improvements, extend the existing right-hand turn lane into Auto Ranch Road, and then the northbound left turn lane would need to be constructed. Number two is to reconstruct portions of Auto Ranch Road to elevate the finished crown above the 25-year 3-day storm. So this is important. We did surveyed the center line of Auto Ranch Road, and there's a low spot about halfway down that goes below the recommended minimum road crown elevations within any part of Collier County. We have observed inundation of the road during regular rainy seasons. Not too bad, but an inch of water, 2 inches of water topping it. And then after Hurricane Ian, this is Auto Ranch Road. After the hurricane, and there's several inches of water along a large stretch of the road. Obviously, we wouldn't want the existing residents nor the potential future residents to have to drive through puddles to get home every night. So we propose to physically elevate the crown in the road between just a few inches at the ends and up to 1.5 feet in the middle in the existing low spot. So the road would remain dry in a normal wet season, and in after most heavy storm events. Of course, storm surge, in the Ian, we would have remained dry there. So that's very important and a commitment that we're willing to make. Number 3 is to widen the road and resurface it. We've got a cross-section. Oh, it's right there, shit. There it is. So again, there's 20 foot of existing asphalt and roadside swales that are in not very good condition, very little bit of shoulder that's existing. So in reconstruction of the road, we're proposing to increase the travel lanes to 11 feet with a 4-foot paved shoulder on one side and an open swale. On the other side, a non-mountable curb, a utility strip, and a 5-foot sidewalk that would run from US 41 down to the project. We feel these are significant improvements and would provide adequate facilities to service our project and the existing residents and future residents along Auto Ranch Road. Number 4, again, is the sidewalk shown on the cross-section. Number 5 is to regrade the shoulders, which is the benefit, of course, shown on the section. Number 6, existing today, there's 15 driveways that connect to Auto Ranch Road. Most contain a culvert underneath the driveway, closing in the swale. These culverts are of different materials, different sizes, and different operating conditions. Found some that are crushed, one that was missing. They're in poor shape. So as part of rebuilding the 1.25 mile of Auto Ranch Road, we would replace each of the driveway connections with a brand new culvert of same material and adequate size to direct water to flow underneath their driveways. Number 7 is along that point that the driveways are of different materials and widths and anyway, so after we install the new culverts, we would also provide the owner with a new driveway apron, much like you see on many of the county projects that we're doing now. As far as helping with the water flow, the Auto Ranch Road does have some existing cross culverts. There are culverts that run from one side of the road to the other to allow the stormwater surface waters to equalize. And done some preliminary engineering and have identified at least one point where an additional drive cross culvert would want to be installed, and also replace the existing cross culverts underneath Auto Ranch Road. The proposed apartments in section 29, of course, would want to be provided with municipal water and sewer, Collier County water and sewer. So we would install adequately sized water main with fire hydrants down Auto Ranch Road, and also a sewage force main along there. So the capacity would be both for the 750 apartment units as well as the lots along Auto Ranch Road. I do believe that well, they'd be provided with fire protection immediately, and then they could always get a water meter from the county, apply for a water meter and get water. The sewer would, they would have to abandon their septic system and put in their own pump stations to get into that. This is a pressure system, but still the water and sewer would be available to them. Wayne talked about the bus stop at 41, so I won't talk about that. So the developer would commit to making these improvements to Auto Ranch Road. We estimated the cost of what I just went through at $7.8 million of improvements just on the Auto Ranch Road portion of the property. The immediate benefits to the surrounding neighbors, I think most importantly, is with drainage and flood relief. The road would be elevated above the flood stages so it doesn't periodically become inundated. There'd be a brand new swales on both sides of the road, graded at an equal gradient all the way from 41 down to section 29, with brand new functioning culverts under each of the existing driveways. So when we get heavy rains, the water would, today it moves slow or barely moves. And with these improvements, it would allow the water to be able to traverse its way down Auto Ranch Road and get into the estuary down below section 29. Do you want to do water management now? Is there a amount? No? That one? So as part of the access utility corridor to the apartment complex, we're proposing to run the same cross-section that you see for Auto Ranch Road down along that old farm road. That road acts as a dam and blocks the water which naturally travels to the south or down on this picture into the wetlands in the estuary, finally into the backwaters in the Gulf of Mexico. The cross-section for the roadway would be similar to to Auto Ranch Road, which would take up 60 feet. And you heard the number of the area for the that we were proposing to impact through that wetland area at 5.8 acres. Most of that is for drainage and water management. So we propose to have a collector swale along the northerly side of that road with cross culverts underneath this new road to a spreader swale along the southerly edge of the road. So in other words, we would be facilitating the movement of surface water flow from the north side of Section 29 down through the estuary. Moving over to the development portion of the apartment projects, that the surface water management system would be standalone for South Florida water management regulations, to where we would retain an attenuated 25-year storm. We would discharge to the south, so there's no users south of us that would be impacted. However, the going south neighbors to the north have that long linear lake there. Some of that water could overflow or inflows into the site. And our preliminary water management plans show that we're be collecting that any off-site inflows along our northerly development boundary and carry them over to the access road from the end of the existing Auto Ranch Road to our development, and cross them, pass that water through to the south side and let it go down into the estuary and move on to the south. So this project would provide additional drainage and much superior drainage along Auto Ranch Road than what we have today, and then it would also overcome the dam that was created by the building of the farm road many decades ago by us passing the water, collecting the water first of all, and then passing it under our new driveway to the south. So any water that would be backing up and collecting along that linear lake would be able to sheet flow out and then down through the new facilities that we're proposing to build. So if you have any questions, I could try and answer them.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, well, you referenced a couple of times portions of Auto Ranch Road that the plan is to improve. Which portions? Or is it, do you have a map that shows what you're going to do and where?
We may have a map, but no, the improvements to Auto Ranch Road are from including the intersection at US 41 all the way down to Section 29.
So the reference of portions of Auto Ranch Road really is different improvements to Auto Ranch Road on portions of Auto Ranch Road, but you're going to improve the whole road to the crown for to be above the 25-year storm event.
Yes, sir. My reference to a portion of Auto Ranch Road is in the about halfway down Auto Ranch Road from 41 to Section 29. It gets really low. There's a valley.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I got that. I just wanted to clarify, because both you and Wayne mentioned portions of Auto Ranch Road, and I just wanted to make sure. My understanding was what you just said is from 41 and the improvements there all the way down to the access road to Section 29.
Yes, sir. The cross section that's on the screen now is what we're proposing, Auto Ranch Road 41 to Section 29.
Was any modeling accomplished with regard to the capacities for movement of water east and west on Auto Ranch Road? You talked about some cross culverts underneath Auto Ranch Road to move water back and forth. And we don't want to negatively impact somebody by moving somebody else's water to them.
Yes, there was some preliminary modeling that was performed, and we relied on that.
Okay. And I don't know if you're the appropriate person to ask, but when water and sewer is also extended down to the site, is there a requirement for the people on Auto Ranch to connect, or is it voluntary?
And I was going to hit that point. Since they're zoned ag land, it's voluntary. They're not required.
Say that again?
The properties on Auto Ranch Road are zoned agricultural. They're not required to connect. It's purely voluntary if they want to connect to water and or sewer.
Thank you.
Mr. Locastro.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, don't say portions, because that confuses us. It's the entire road. You don't want to mix words. Ms. Scott, I actually have a question for you. So since we're on Auto Ranch Road, seeing those photos, historically, what's been the county's position? I realize there's not 10,000 people that live on Auto Ranch Road, but is there a recent time that we did some improvements on there? Is there something, forget this, if this never happens, is there something in our future road improvement that would significantly enhance Auto Ranch Road at the county's, using the county's budget?
A few years back. There you go. A few years back, the county undertook what we called the Lake Park Flowway study, which is actually looking at stormwater in the area along Auto Ranch Road as well as Lake Park Boulevard, which is a roadway that runs parallel to Auto Ranch Road. And as part of that study for stormwater improvements in the area, we identified the need to improve Auto Ranch Road. Project is not funded, but it was a study that the county did undertake. So in the future, if we were to undertake those improvements for stormwater, also potential looking at going through perhaps some grant opportunities to do a septic to sewer type conversion in the area, then absolutely we would look at improving Auto Ranch Road at that same time.
Did we do anything in the last 3, 5, 6 years, whatever, to make repairs? Hearing culverts are crushed. Culverts are all different because the culverts serve a very important role. Have we done anything out there at a smaller level? I realize, like you say, there was a master plan to maybe hit it hard, but have we done any type of just maintenance? Have we addressed those culverts or any type of drainage that was maybe at a smaller level as just part of normal road maintenance?
I do not believe so, but I can check in our system to look at that.
Okay, thanks.
I have a follow-up. Attorney, since you're on, Attorney, can you just clarify if, just from my experiences, if it's a culvert on a driveway, is it the county's responsibility or the property owner's responsibility to maintain the culvert?
It is the property owner's responsibility to maintain the culvert for their driveway.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner McDaniel.
And this is just a after the fact thought, if this project were to be improved, are there any speed control mechanisms to be installed on Auto Ranch? Because that's going to be a mile-long straightaway.
For the record, Jim Banks, it's currently 30 miles per hour, and it will remain 30 miles per hour.
That's not what I asked, Jim.
I'm sorry.
I know it's 30.
Okay.
I'm talking about how do you get people to throw out the anchor?
Like traffic calming devices? No, we're not proposing any traffic calming devices. It's a public road. You typically don't put speed humps and that type of thing on a public road.
Okay. I know there's positives and negatives that come along with that, but that's something we may need to address at some stage.
I will talk a little bit more about that when I.
Oh, okay.
All right. That's a good segue. Mr. Banks is.
Here he comes.
I will. I'll help him.
Please help me.
Oops.
Okay. Good morning, good late morning. For the record, Jim Banks here on behalf of the applicant. I will be relatively brief. My firm prepared the traffic impact study for this project. The traffic study was prepared pursuant to Collier County standards. Your staff reviewed the report and they agreed with its findings. The report was based upon the proposed development of a 750-unit apartment complex. And we determined that the trip cap that would be applied on this project is 343 PM peak hour two-way trips. The report also established that at project completion, and in considering the improvements that Mr. Minor had mentioned, which I'll discuss a little bit more here in a minute, that at project completion, that the Auto Ranch Road will operate at level of service C standards and at a volume to capacity ratio of 42%. So that means at project completion, there is a 58% surplus of capacity remaining on Auto Ranch Road. We also determined that US 41, not too close to the microphone, that US 41 would also operate at level of service C and at 80% of its capacity. So the traffic study concludes, and as agreed to with your staff, that the proposed apartment complex will not negatively impact the adjacent road network, and that the roadways under influence have adequate capacity to accommodate the traffic associated with this project. Now, this conclusion also considers the improvements on Auto Ranch Road, which again begin at US 41 and extend all the way down to Section 29. Go back to that. Okay. So the improvements, I refer to them as both safety improvements and capacity improvements. Again, widening the lanes, the north-south travel lanes on Auto Ranch Road, the entire length of Auto Ranch Road. We'll also be providing a paved shoulder on one side of the road. And on the other side of the road, we'll have a curb and gutter feature, as well as a sidewalk that's offset of the road. The roadway will be elevated in those sections where it's needed. So again, the entire length of the road is being improved, but in those lower sections where the road has a tendency to flood, it will be elevated. But the cross-section, as shown now, is what the drivers will experience the entire length of Auto Ranch Road. There will be roadside drainage feature improvements, which includes reestablishing the swells and culverts. In addition, the corridor's drainage outfall will be reestablished, which is a very important element of the drainage operation. As I said before, the speed limit will remain posted 30 miles per hour, legally enforceable, but we are not proposing traffic calming devices. There will be intersection improvements at US 41 and Auto Ranch Road. As you can see from this aerial, the right turn lane that's on US 41 today is grossly substandard. The developer commits to extending that right turn lane to meet FDOT standards. In addition, if you're traveling northwest on US 41, the developer will also construct a left turn lane for those motorists that want to turn southbound on Auto Ranch Road. These are very important safety improvements that the developer will undertake. I submit to you that these proposed safety enhancements on Auto Ranch Road, as well as at the intersection at US 41, will substantially increase the road's capacity. Today, in its current condition, it's estimated to be 400 vehicles per hour peak direction. With these improvements, the capacity is raised to 600 vehicles per hour peak direction, and that is a conservative estimate. We're understating the actual capacity of the road. And it will also provide superior safety features for the residents that live along Auto Ranch Road. And that one of the critical features of that is that offset sidewalk along Auto Ranch Road that will accommodate pedestrians. That concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. LaCastro.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you put back the traffic numbers?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Ms. Scott, have you seen this slide before, at least these numbers? Is this part of something you're aware of? Yes. Okay, so do you concur that these numbers are at least close? You know, they're always plus or minus, but are they, you know, and would you agree with the estimation of the trips?
Yes, sir. They use the Institute of Traffic Engineers. We require that as part of our traffic impact statement guidelines.
So what I recommend to the other side before you come to the podium, and as I said in my opening statement, I greatly appreciate the preliminary steps of the Planning Commission, but I watched and read the entire transcript of the Planning Commission, and a lot of discussion was about the increased traffic on Auto Ranch Road. Let me read you an excerpt from one of many citizen emails I got, which we're here to separate rumor from fact. So I'm going to read it verbatim, and I got this from quite a few citizens, and it was also mentioned in the Planning Commission discussion. And I don't say this to take sides, but we're here to figure out truth, facts, details. We already heard several people talk about preserves and panthers, and it's one thing to say, I saw a tree and I saw an animal, but is it a preserve? And we have to deal with the law. We have to deal with facts. And they're just two short sentences, but this is what has gone out on social media, and also what came to all 5 of these commissioners in a plethora of emails. If approved, this development will cause 4,000 vehicle trips on Auto Ranch Road, exiting onto State Road 41 in East Naples per day. It will also destroy the storm surge protection of this preserve, and gives Royal Palm Golf Estates. It will further endanger the Florida panther, 35 of which were killed by vehicle traffic this year alone in Collier County, and other wildlife living within the Seminole State Forest. I don't say that to pick sides here, but there's a huge difference in what is being sort of told by you all and what we're going to hear. So what I would tell the other side is, we're here to hear you prove this. So if these numbers are wrong and it's 4,000 trips, boy, I've got a significant issue with Auto Ranch Road and with Section 29. If the trips are in the several hundreds, we've approved projects where vehicular traffic was much greater. And if it's on an improved road that you're going to spend $7 million on improving, I have a lot less concern over the number of trips I see on this slide than the 4,000 that came to us in a flood of emails from citizens who all were begging us to disapprove of this project, of which, if this was true, it would be one of my main concerns, and probably all of us. So what say you? I've already heard from Ms. Scott, who I consider our traffic expert. I know there'll be, opposing view, which I welcome hearing, but we have to sort out what maybe the people before us who had heard the preliminary presentation might not have sorted out.
I think, and I'm sure Trinity will correct me if I'm wrong, is the way traffic impact statements are done in Collier County is you do it based upon the peak hours, the morning peak hours and the afternoon peak hours. That's the critical time, because that's when you're going to have the most people on the road at the same time. So that's the analysis we do as a peak hour trip. There are going to be trips throughout the day, and I don't think their number is wrong for total daily trips. But that's not how you measure capacity and how you measure safety. You measure traffic, capacity, and safety based upon the peak hour, because people come and go throughout the day. So I don't think they're wrong in telling you that there's going to be 4,000 trips a day. But that's not the safety analysis that's done. The safety analysis that's done is at the peak hour. So I think what they're trying to imply is this great number of trips is going to make the road unsafe. That's not factually correct.
Ms. Scott, your comment on that? True or false?
Mark it down. I'm going to agree with Mr. Yovanovich.
Okay.
Yes, that's true. We do look at the peak times for the highest concentration. That's the highest concentration that we anticipate having those vehicles out there. But certainly they're going to have traffic throughout the day.
Would you, and this will be my last question, would you agree that if in the end the 750 units were approved, could the current Auto Ranch Road, as it sits right now, sustain the traffic that would go back and forth to those units, or the improvements they're making would be a requirement, not sort of a carrot or a benefit, but it would be a requirement for that project due to the increased trips and the large residential area that would be created if it got to that point? What would be your professional opinion?
From a pure technical standpoint, can it withstand those trips? Yes, it can, from looking at our capacity manuals and things like that. But that's not what staff would recommend.
Okay.
We would say we would want the improvements. That is a lot of traffic going down a roadway that we know does have some stormwater challenges. So you really don't want to have an additional 750 units at the end of that without having some improvements to it.
When you looked at the schematics of their proposed drawing of what the road would look like, with your expertise, does it look like that their $7 million enhancement hits all the bells and whistles of the things that you look for? If we had the $7 million and we were going to upgrade that road, would it look very similar to this? Or is this even above and beyond what the county standard normally is? I'm just trying to get an idea of quality of improvement compared to other things that the county does or that we expect of other developers.
This is what we would expect to do. Certainly the addition of the sidewalk with having the 750 units at the end is certainly something, perhaps if I was looking to improve that road, we always look to put a sidewalk in, but we would look at what we had from a funding standpoint and all of that. So yes, I mean, raising the road is a significant improvement to what we're dealing with today.
And what's the height of the road? What's the height of the road now and what it could be if you did this? How much higher would it be?
Well, I think he said it could be from inches to 18 inches in the middle that we're raising the road. It's significant.
Yeah. What some people think is a small amount, but raise the road 18 inches and just look at what we did in Goodland. It made a significant difference. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you, sir and ma'am.
And if I could just, and I'm going to bring up Tim to talk about the conservation qualities of the land in a second, but I want to point out something. All of the expert testimony at the Planning Commission was that we met all the criteria from a conservation standpoint, from a transportation standpoint, and from a water management standpoint. There was no expert testimony to the counter of that at the hearing. So going on, let's talk about facts. That's what we're trying to present today, is what is the expert testimony. Not what people may feel, but what's the actual expert testimony. It's taking a little bit longer than I had hoped, but I want to make sure that it's all in the record, not only for you all, but for the people who live in that area. And I'll bring Tim up, and then we'll have a conclusion slide. And I'm sorry.
I have a real quick question about the traffic study. It says AM peak hours, PM peak hours. What is that? Is that 1 hour or several hours?
I know it's from 4 to 6 in the afternoon. I don't.
Okay, so it's not just like in an hour's time.
No, we've been doing these I know enough now that Trinity's trained me to give you those answers. So even though she was agreeing with me, I was actually agreeing with her.
Good, thanks.
Good morning. For the record, Tim Hall with Terrell Hall & Associates. I'm the environmental consultant here on behalf of the petitioner. I'll start talking about, I guess, the quality of the habitat in terms of listed species. The big one that everybody keeps talking about is the panther. The exhibit I have up here shows kind of a little regional area. And when the wildlife agencies were developing the management plan for the panther, to try to help prolong the species, they looked at all of the habitats within the panther's range and they kind of ranked them. And they looked at those highest priority areas where there was the most use, where prey species were present, where the panthers were moving in terms of corridors, and they ranked those. They gave those highest quality habitats a designation of primary habitat, the kind of buffer areas and those that were still being used but not to the extent they qualified as secondary habitat, and then other lands are just designated as other lands. And so what this exhibit shows is that when they were doing that exercise, the primary habitat, if you look at, Rich had a map up earlier that kind of showed the sending lands and receiving land kind of areas, and you can see that the primary habitat kind of mirrors the sending land boundaries to the north of the project, and the secondary habitat kind of mirrors those receiving land areas. The land south of US 41 was not designated under the Panther Management Plan as primary or secondary habitat. It was looked at other lands. That's not to say that panthers can't that's not to say that panthers can't go down into that area, and the FWC, the state wildlife agency, does have a tracking system where when cats get collared, they're able to, they used to do it by planes. They would fly 3 days a week, rain or shine. And the guys would use the radar tracking to triangulate the panther locations out of these small planes. I've done that. If you don't have a very strong stomach for the guy doing circles in the airplane, it's no fun. But they actually were able to pretty accurately find and designate where all of those panthers were and how they moved around. With the advent of technology, they use GPS collars now, so it's a little bit easier. They don't have to do quite so many aerial flights and all. But I say that because there are exhibits that show that there has been panther movement around kind of this property. One of the reasons, and I can't speak for the wildlife agencies, but I have worked with them quite a bit. The area south of 41 with Fiddler's Creek and the mangrove habitat that's down there and all. Mangroves are not primary preferred habitat by the panthers and all. So this area between south of US 41 and San Marco Road and 951 kind of forms this little cul-de-sac. So when you look at the panther movement through there based on the radio telemetry and all, you can kind of see that they'll come down into that area and then they'll leave. They kind of loop down, and so they don't spend a whole lot of time around this site. And that's kind of why it wasn't looked at as high-quality habitat when any of these were being established. When you get to the property specifically, I think I might have lost control.
Gremlins.
Here we go. So the property itself, originally it was cleared and used for row crop agriculture. After the row crops, there was a time frame where there was some nursery operations that happened out there. And then in the most recent time frame, the last, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years, it's been pasture. It's been used as pasture. And so when we went through the process with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and this area was offered for preserve, they use a kind of a complicated math problem, math equation to look at what that value is in terms of mitigation or benefits for the panther. And as I showed you on the slide before, because this was outside of any of those designated areas, the property as a whole, both the Section 19 and the Section 29 preserve areas, were treated as 1/3 of the value as if they would have been in primary habitat. So they're discounted by that value initially, and then looking at the type of habitat that's on there, the highest quality habitat has a numerical ranking. It's called a PHU value of 9.5 PHUs per acre. And you get down to exotic vegetation, which is 3 PHUs per acre, water, which has no value. So the pasture area was looked at a lower value. And when we made the application to try to just amend the Estancia project, the value associated with this 50 acres out of the 1,300 plus that the project was providing, the value of this one was 119 PHUs. So you can see it had a very low value in terms of the credit that Fish and Wildlife Service gave to the project in terms of the panther mitigation. The two other species that were also addressed in the discussions with Fish and Wildlife Service was the Florida bonneted bat and the American crocodile. The bonneted bat needs tall, relatively large, like 15-inch DBHs or bigger, tree cavities in trees for their roosting and all. And you can see on the pasture areas, there are no trees that meet the criteria that would support any type of bonneted bat roosting. Foraging can occur. They like to forage over the open water areas and all. We did some radio echolocation monitoring out there and did not see any evidence of any Florida bonneted bats in this area based on the echolocation surveys that were done. And then the last species was the crocodile. When we originally permitted this project with Fish and Wildlife and all, the crocodile was not an issue. After we made the application, I believe it was in 2019 or 2020, there was some crocodile nesting that was documented to the east of the Kersey fill pits, which are, this is Kersey. Did that show up? the fill pits in the marsh mangrove area to the west of those fill pits. I believe there was 2 crocodile nests that were documented down there. So that was an additional, when we were trying to make the modification to this project, they asked us to verify whether or not there was any crocodile use within the farm fields or the project area. And so I did a crocodile nesting survey and found no evidence of any crocodiles. There are alligators within the ditches there, but we didn't see any evidence of crocodiles at that time. So as Rich had said, the application that we had made previously to Fish and Wildlife Service didn't have really anything to do directly with the development of this parcel. The application that was made to Fish and Wildlife was to amend the panther mitigation that was provided to the Estancia project and make that change. Fish and Wildlife came back and denied that application, but a lot of the denial was based on process in terms of the Army Corps of Engineers permit had expired. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service process, through their Section 7 consultations in the Endangered Species Act, has to have a permitting agency. They call it a nexus. Commissioner LaCastro probably knows this better than I do in terms of how the different agencies interact with each other. But
poorly.
Without an active core application, the Fish and Wildlife Service basically said they would not act on our request to make that amendment, and so denied it. And as Rich said early in the presentation, as this moves forward, if it is approved, then a new application will go in to the Corps of Engineers, which will address the impacts associated with developing this property, as well as that mitigation associated with this property that was assigned to the Estancia project. So essentially, there will be 2 different mitigation analyses done, that which will provide the credit back towards the Estancia project, plus the impacts that would be associated with actually developing this and removing it from use by any of the cats or other listed species.
Mr. LaCastro.
Can you go back to the map that has the striped maps that show primary and secondary? So my first question is, for the record, can you define the difference between the yellow primary section and the purple secondary section with regard to level of panther concern, preservation? Define what the difference between those 2 areas.
So, as I said, the yellow striped area is the primary habitat. That's the area that the Fish and Wildlife Service and FWC consider has the most benefit and the most value to the panther. So if you go in with a project to impact lands within those areas, they will assess a higher mitigation value to those lands in order to impact them.
And the secondary one would be similar, but less of a mitigation. But the reality is a major portion of Royal Palm Golf Estate sits in the secondary area, correct?
No, the Royal Palm is also south of 41.
So in that secondary area, there's no residential communities at all?
No, there are.
Yeah.
I think Greenway Road, there's a couple of the little roads that go to the north there that are up in there.
6L Farms.
Yeah, 6L Farms and all those. Okay. So one of the things I say to the the folks that are going to come up, I guess probably after lunch in opposition is, although the Planning Commission had 3 days and uncovered so many things, went in so many different directions, please listen to what the 5 commissioners here are asking of this group. These are the things that we're zeroing in on. We do this full time with lots of other things, many things that don't even come to the Planning Commission or just conversations we have with developers. So it's important that the questions we're asking aren't steering us to a certain preliminary, decision, but these are the particular things we're zeroing in on: traffic density, preservation, the wildlife, water runoff. We're trying to get down to the brass tacks, and some of the numbers on their side differ on your side. Doesn't means that maybe some of them are like Ms. Scott said. The numbers for traffic actually are not incorrect. It just depends on perception, and you could be giving a perception that's actually not how we do it, maybe. In the other cases, the things that are important to you, make sure it's important. It is important that you hear the questions that we're zeroing in on, because those are the main points that lead to our decision, not a recommendation, a decision on what's going to happen. So things that you don't hear doesn't mean they're not important. But all of you who have been in my office, and it's almost everybody in this room, I said over and over again, pick the main huge points. Don't go down a rabbit trail on point number 11, which actually has merit, but might be a lot less significant to our decision here today. So I hope that helps. If it doesn't, but it's my view. But I appreciate your clarification on the map.
Mr. Hall, that sounds pretty good, by the way. I have a question. So back in the day, when Estancia was come, they could have mitigated the Panthers for $1 million. And in lieu of that, they offered Section 29 in lieu of paying $1 million. Is that correct? So $1 million would have solved all the Panthers' credit, solved all the Panthers' problems.
The original, the mitigation requirement for the Estancia project, and forgive me, these numbers may not be exactly right, but it was about 2,400 PHUs. 2,400 PHUs. The properties in section 29 and 19 that they offered for preserve provided 1,390 some odd PHUs. They still had to go purchase, they had other 1,000 that they were short from the bank. They had the option to purchase that whole 2,000 and some from the bank, and they used this option as a kind of a way to lessen that off-site purchase that they had to do.
So my point in asking that question is
How much? If you looked at that number, the 1,300 and some that this whole preserve area provided, about $800 per PHU. So 1,300 would be about $1 million, $1 million, $2 million.
And I would just want to point, you're right. I would point out section 19 was additional lands within that. So I don't know how many, about what, 400 acres, section 19?
300.
300. So it would be even, you're right. They could have just bought it for $1 million and we wouldn't be sitting here today. Or even less, we could have gotten out for $100,000 and we wouldn't be sitting here today.
My point was money would have solved the Panthers' problem.
Absolutely.
So now I saw something earlier in a bullet point or something where the applicant is asking, we will provide twice the amount of Panther coverage to be able to take back the obligation that they offered in the first place.
Correct. We had talked to the agencies about paying $200,000 to remove the 58 acres, and they wanted $1.6 million.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay.
And if I just might clarify, they wanted $1.6 million, but it was like in a different county.
In Glades County, which was hard for us to understand how that really benefited Collier County, but, it's the federal government. We're at the end of our presentation. Your staff is recommending approval of all 3 petitions. The change to the DRI, the change to the PUD, and the change to the growth management plan. Your staff are experts in their individual areas of expertise. It's an arduous process to get through to get here. And we wouldn't be here if staff weren't recommending approval and satisfying all the criteria for making sure we're handling water management, we're handling traffic, we're handling environmental related issues. We have checked the box with every one of your staff reviews and in their expertise, and we're requesting that this is a project focusing specifically on Section 29 that you all have identified as a priority to provide affordable housing. We are doing that. We are doing it in a location that makes sense. It's close to employers. It's on lands that are not environmentally sensitive, and it is going to be done in a safe way, including roughly $7.8 million worth of improvements to Water Ranch Road that we would make, I would think, is probably above and beyond what county might do themselves, but we're doing it because it makes sense for the residents on Otter Ranch, but it also makes sense for the residents who are going to reside in our community. That's our presentation. If you have any more questions regarding everything we've gotten into, we're happy to address them or turn it over to however you want to go next as a board. If you want to go to staff, take a break, or whatever you want to do.
Mr. Bosey, how long do you think you're going to need? All right, so we'll do you, and then we'll take a lunch before we hear public comment.
Mike Bosey, Plan and Zoning Director. Good afternoon. Hopefully I'll be able to wrap this up in 20, 25 minutes. What I'm really looking to do, we've expressed our recommendations within our executive summaries. We've included our staff reports. I wanted to get some more pertinent things on the record. A lot of stuff has been covered by the applicant, so I can expedite those in a little bit. Just wanted to go back to the Planning Commission recommendation. It was a recommendation of 4-0 on July 28th to recommend denial to the Planning Commission. They identified the importance of the GMP as being a high bar to pass, and they felt that the applicant hadn't met that. They lack of creating jobs, creating economic development, discourage of urban sprawl, not adequately protecting natural resources, providing goods accessible to related land uses, and limited development in coastal high hazard area to protect human life. Those were the issues that the Planning Commission had identified to recommend denial of the petition, but they did have an alternative recommendation that they said if you remove all references to Section 29, all of the other master plan changes to reduction or the reallocation of the land uses on Collier Boulevard, the internal modifications to the master plan, the floor area ratio, all those changes were recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. As it was pointed out, since 1998, from a local perspective, we have always anticipated that some development was going to be, I'm just trying to find the actual page, just need page. And this is 98, it's when they added, I think Mr. Yovanovich has already highlighted these, they're tough to read, but it's passive recreation, biking, hiking, launching storage facilities, active recreational, agricultural, boat storage facilities, within there. And another thing I think that is important to understand, and that's within the that's within that section area 29. If you look, it says, in addition, there shall be a 0-foot setback line required from water bodies and structures. So they're having the development standards that are contained within that section are not that demanding. If you look up to the top, your front yard, side yard, or rear yard is going to be 50 feet or 30 feet. So what's that saying is a development that was going to be proposed since 1998 with a maximum height of 35 feet. So that's not an actual height, that's a zoned height, but 35 feet, could be within 30 feet or 50 feet of the property lines. Places it in closer proximity to the development that's within Boyden South, within the Royal Gulf Estates. I thought that was significant. And we've always known for 26 years, there's been land use activity that has been allocated to Section 29. I think I wanted to put that forward because during the Planning Commission, it was stated, I couldn't tell you how many times, that all of 29 is supposed to be in preserve. All of 29, what they're referencing was the Federal Permitting Act, and I don't deny that could have been, that's the case. But what was done at the local level has always called for activity. Something was going to happen, something was planned, something was allowed for within this area. Rich had alluded to the location in terms of where it sits within the Rural Fringe Mixed Use District. The Rural Fringe Mixed Use District was adopted in 2002. It became effective in 2003 because of some legal challenges. It's made up of a series of sending lands, receiving lands, neutral lands. Sending lands are the areas that are most environmentally sensitive. You want to really send the development away from there. Your receiving lands are less environmentally sensitive, more prone to development where you want to receive that development. Neutral is neither environmentally sensitive or directly prone for development, so that they're really outside of the program and they're entitled to your traditional agricultural uses that it's originally zoned for. And I think that's important. I will acknowledge that this is basically the southernmost portion of that land use that is been disturbed, because the rest of the land uses basically make up your Rookery Bay estuary, your Collier Seminole State Park system. So it is environmentally sensitive. But this is where this is being proposed, is the end of the disturbed area, and then south of that is when you really start your environmentally sensitive areas. And Mr. Hall referenced the utilization of this area in limited fashion from the Panthers as well. The next slide I wanted to put up just highlights some of the other activities that are being requested. Not only, and I think Mr. Yovanovich has probably covered this, so I don't have to get into it, but changing the intensity from group homes from 26 units per acre to 0.60 for a floor area ratio. To allow for the provision of a CAT bus stop, removal of lakes, and reconfigure the residential and the business tracks along Collier Boulevard. So there's a lot of different things that are being asked for. There has been objections obviously from the Boyden South folks related to the affordable housing. There has been some objection from homeowners within the Fiddler's Creek about the relocation of some of those internal alignments, and I really want to address that point with these next couple slides. So this is the master plan that currently exists with the 18 ordinance, and as you can see, I have circled in red here, you have a road that comes down and ends here. And when you go to what's being proposed, we see that road now extends here. So what the objection has been that folks that live in the neighborhoods to the west are objecting to that amount of residential development that is now going to be routed through their individual neighborhood, saying that it all, and a lot of the statement has been a generalization, it's all going to end up on to 951. Now, there's some other access routes towards where they could access 241 that probably has a little bit different distribution of where those trips are going to be. But that's really irrelevant to the point that I want to make. And it's related to what our code says, what our land development code says about this particular activity of modifying some internal realignments within a master plan and what that master plan does and does not vest. And that's related to 100213. These are our PUD procedures. So these are from our land development code. And it basically says this is what staff is obligated to follow when we're proposing a PUD or a PUD master plan. And I highlighted the pertinent area for this development, and it says effective, and this is under C, effective plan unit development zoning. And it says the development in the area delineated as the PUD district on the official zoning atlas shall proceed only in accordance with the adopted development regulations, and master plan does not authorize or vest the location, design, capacity, or routing of traffic for any access point depicted on or described in such ordinance or plan. So it's a lot of words, but what it's saying is there's no vesting within the location, design, capacity, or routing of traffic for any one access plan depicted on or within such plan. So that statement stands by itself. In staff feels that gives the reader the understanding that that PUD master plan is conceptual in design, and it's not a site development plan. And it's further refined with this section where it talks about minor changes. And this is how you deal with minor changes within a PUD and within a PUD master plan. And basically, underneath 3 minor changes, the county manager or designee shall also be authorized to allow minor changes to the PUD master plan during its subdivision improvement plan or site development plan process to accommodate topography, vegetation, or other site conditions not identified or accounted for during its original submittal and review when said changes have been determined to be compatible with adjacent land uses, have no impacts external to the site, existing or proposed, and is otherwise consistent with the provisions of this code and the growth management plan. And these changes shall include, the very first one, internal realignment of rights-of-way, including a relocation of access points onto the PUD itself, where no water management facilities, conservation preservation areas, or required easements are affected. That second provision authorizes staff to make those modifications that the platting, that this master plan is trying to catch up to. So staff feels we have been within the rights that the land development code, the instruction that the regulations are contained within the land development code in terms of moving forward with approving plats that maybe aren't 100% in alignment with the site plan, but with the master plan, but that master plan is not a site plan. It's a conceptual development plan, and the LDC specifically within these sections allows for staff to take those administrative functions. This is related to the distinction between our local permitting and our federal permitting, and this is straight from the Florida staff before the action of the local county. So what he's saying, has the agency issued a final development permit? And then second, 6 says, the issuance of a development permit or permit order by a county does not in any way create any rights of the party or the applicant to obtain a permit from the state or federal agency, and does not create a liability on the part of the county for issuance of the permits if the applicant fails to obtain request approvals or fulfills the obligations imposed by the state agency or undertakes actions that result from a violation of state or federal law. A county shall attach such a disclaimer to the issuance of the development permit and shall include a permit condition that all other applicable state and federal permits are obtained before commencing development. That's what we do within every single one of our PUDs. Within our PUDs, we say that when you come for a site development plan and a plat, and actually the development order that will be associated with those building permits, you're required to show your federal and state permitting, but not until that stage. We are at the entitlement stage. There still has to go through an SDP or a plat, and then a request for building permits before that pre-construction meeting would happen. So in that regard, there are two distinct processes, and we think the county is within its rights in terms of acting upon the requests that we currently have. And one last thing staff would like to get on the record, and I can wrap it up. Hopefully I'm within that time frame I estimated. But I did notice, and Mr. Yovanovich had recommended, staff has recommended approval, but staff is recommending approval with conditions. One of the conditions that was contained within the staff report, and staff is still requesting, is that a 15-foot type B landscape buffer be provided along the northern and western portions of the development area. And another aspect, and another reason that staff is looking at, and it's one of the things that helped us reach a recommendation of approval. If you look at the development area, on the eastern side, the closest proximity to the development area of the apartments and the amenities to the south side of the canal is 361 feet. On the west side, to the north side of the canal, you're at 518 feet. Now, what's being proposed is the maximum height of 69 feet. So from the west side, you're close to 9 times the height of the building setback. And on the eastern side, you're closer to 7 times the height of the building setback. Those are significant setbacks that will help mitigate the impact of this potential development on the residential development that sits to the north of the property. That was one of the reasons staff, from a design standpoint, felt that compatibility could be arranged. From a public benefit standpoint, the 225 units that are being proposed as income restricted is a significant benefit. If you remember, this Board of County Commissioners provided over $3 million of money from our surtax fundage for Ecos on Collier, and that was 162 units of 100% affordable. This proposal is significantly higher than that proposal. Both of those proposals were in the coastal high hazard area. And because of that, both of those proposals do have to mitigate. The applicant has indicated they are willing to provide for the cots that are requested from EMS, as well as the portable generator to provide for the expansion of the sheltering facilities within the county. That, in addition to the improvements upon Auto Ranch Road, one of the things staff was wondering as part of the Planning Commission presentations, what was the value? What's the estimated value of those improvements? And I think there was significant consideration that's going to be required for that, as well as the bus stop, as well as the contributions to EMS. Those reasons, with the site planning, are all the reasons why staff arrived upon this recommendation of approval. But staff would be insistent if there was a recommendation of approval. We think that the setbacks that are provided for within the current display has to be incorporated within the PUD. It's not explicitly incorporated within the PUD. It's because of that, and because of that separation, that's one of the reasons why staff was able to sign off in support of the program. And with that, any questions you would like for myself, Ms. Scott, or Ms. Cook, or any other staff?
Mr. Cowell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Bosey, I just get real quick. I just want to kind of touch on some things. The way the language is written right now, if we understand from Mr. Yovanovich's presentation, and you just reinforced it yourself, the particular 49 plus minus acre section that right now basically has been used as farmland, agricultural, and it's clear cut It's not part of the vegetated area of Section 29. But you said that it could be used for several different things as written right now, like boat storage. And I'm just kind of like spitballing. Could they do like dry boat storage, like put buildings, because it says you can go up to 35 feet?
Yes,
They could do like dry storage, like almost storage buildings up to 35 feet for boats. And what would the setback be according to what the language is now?
it's kind of tough because there's no real road system there, but the most prohibitive setback is 50 feet for a rear and front. So it's 30 feet on the side, so it would either be 30 feet or 50 feet from the property line that would have to be set back.
You could have a building as big as a storage boat facility building, as big as 35 feet high within 30 to 50 feet of residential property, as the way it's written right now.
From the property line of the development envelope, it would have to be set back, yes, 50 feet.
Okay. And could the developer, the owner, could he go in there and put, let's say, a tennis pickleball court center that he could build in there for his residents and or members of his club for Fiddler's
I
Creek?
think that would fit. The recreational facilities is one of the allowed uses within the Section 29 currently.
And would they have, of course, they'd have a right of way to get back there, and Auto Ranch Road would more likely be the way.
Oh, that would be the way the transportation would direct it.
So that's just as of right now. If we did nothing, the developer, the owner of the property still has these rights to do these things as it is right now.
Yes, vested by the PUD.
Thank you.
Mr. LaCastro.
Mr. Bosey, the buffer height that the buffer that you talked about north and also to the west, what would be the required height that the county would, if we approve this, would mandate?
I believe the trees only have to come in at 8 feet. And I believe it's 25 feet on centered with a hedge that's planted at 3 feet that grows to 6 feet.
Okay. We got a lot of concern about Auto Ranch Road, and I think that we've talked about that, quite a bit. A lot of concern from people talking about Marsh Drive, and just the short of it. Is Marsh Drive a concern? What would the county's recommendation be? Does it need to be enhanced? Would the increased traffic be above and beyond what we expect? A lot of Marsh Drive complaints came in kind of late, at least to me, and all of a sudden it was, oh my gosh, Marsh Drive, or to Miss Scott, what's the short version of our concern, impact? Is that just somebody grabbing at straws trying to stop a project or slow a project, or we have a real concern about Marsh Drive being impacted?
That is an internal between the CDD and the HOA.
So it's a private road, as we discussed. I'm trying to get a little bit of this on the record.
So from a traffic impact standpoint, we're looking at where that traffic is hitting the major county roadway network. So Fiddler's Creek development is one of our older communities within the county. It's a vested development. So when they're vested, we already have the trips for those 6,000 units already accounted for within our transportation concurrency network. So where those trips are hitting US 41 or Collier Boulevard. So the internal private roadways, that is a private matter between the Community Development District and the associated homeowners associations within the development.
So if they felt there was some sort of significant impact, they would have to address that with their citizens, as we've discussed.
Correct.
Right? Okay. And then this might be for later, but just stew on this. So I appreciate all the details, all the specifics going through the maps and everything. But my question for you probably at the end of this is, why didn't the Planning Commission after 3 days agree with you? Or why did they think what you presented was incorrect and they recommended something almost totally different than what our entire county staff is recommending? So maybe that's not the answer for that. I have a feeling you're going to be back at the podium, but that's a big question, for me. 3 days worth of testimony, most of it from Mr. Bosey, going through all of this here. Yet, our Planning Commission after 3 days said, sorry, not now. They did agree to quite a bit, so I will preface that you said in the beginning. But the part that is really the biggest moving part that we have to decide here. Obviously, you've outlined how you don't feel it's a major impact, and all those bullets that they considered. I think you have a rebuttal to every single one, but I would say hold that answer because I think we're also going to get a lot from the opposite side. But before any vote happens, that's really a big concern on my mind. If the Collier County Planning Commission isn't a dry run and it's a major preliminary step, why did they unanimously disagree with every single thing when it came to Section 29 that our educated, informed county staff presented to them? I need that answer before I vote on this. So, and I think you're the person to give it. I'm sure Mr. Ivanovich going to have an answer because he's the applicant. I want to hear it from county staff. But I think not now, or Commissioner Hall will kill me because I think it's a long answer. But that would be something I think for you all to chew on.
It's something that all of us is wondering. Commissioner McDaniel.
You got an answer for him, or?
I was going to ask him one question before the break.
Okay. Help me a little bit with the density. Mike, this is a rural fringe mixed-use piece of property that's already been delineated as neutral. Help me get to the density request that you're recommending approval on here from.
As a whole, the current allocation within Fiddler's about 1.52. This would take the overall PUD to 1.71, but that's spread over close to 4,000 units. As a net, it's 15 units an acre. The most comparable that it would be in close proximity if the receiving area, the blue area that was within the rural fringe mixed use district, that's just right across the street from this development. If they did affordable housing, they would be eligible for 11.2. So basically, it's about 3.8 units above what they could do within the receiving areas when they have a project that contains affordable housing. That was part of our evaluation, and the net density at 15 units an acre most certainly is much higher than what the Boyne South PUD is allocated, and we felt that because their access point is on Auto Ranch Road, and that has no interaction with the Boyne South PUD, and additionally, the proposed setbacks of being over 350 and 500 feet setback, we felt that density would be ameliorated by that distance, and that the traffic impact associated with this would not be experienced by the existing residential development to the north, because there's no interaction within the roadway system that accesses this apartment complex in that individual development.
Okay. Being designated as neutral, what's allowed?
Right now, it's traditionally what your ag would allow for, and that's 1 to 5 units with residential development, any of your agricultural activities.
And because this is in the rural fringe mixed use district, are there any requisites of TDRs in this calculation to allow them to get to this density?
There's been no consideration for TDRs, as this is a project that predated the rural fringe mixed use district.
Okay, that was the rationale. That was the rationale behind not having TDRs. Okay. That was one of my first notes from back in the beginning when Rich was talking. So, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Okay. All right, this is a good time. Break for lunch. Oh, yes. Sure.
Should I stand here next to you, Mike? Sure. And it kind of goes to, I think, to what Commissioner LaCastro was asking you. You would agree that one of the first questions asked by the chairman of the Planning Commission is, are you recommending approval of this solely because we're providing affordable housing? Do you remember that question? Are you recommending approval of this project solely because we're providing affordable housing?
And that's one of the responses I wish I would have elaborated on instead of just a simple affirmative. It's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons I just listed. It's one of the public benefits that we've identified. But not only not the additional public benefit of the bus stop, or the additional of the affordable housing, of the significant improvements upon Auto Ranch Road, but also the fact that the site design has taken into great consideration the adjoining properties to the north and set themselves back. 531 feet is a significant setback. That's a football field and a half away from your existing residential development. That type of distance will ameliorate the heights that are proposing, and with the additional buffering, we think can most certainly find compatibility within that built environment. But it's not affordable housing is not the only reason why. I think it's the most significant of the public benefit that's provided for. The drive time that was provided by their submittal showed a tremendous number of employers within that 10-mile area that would be prime locations for the workforce and our essential services personnel to locate.
All right, let's break for lunch. Let's come back at 1:30, and we'll begin with the public speaking.